your body will only ever be as strong and as fit and as healthy as it thinks it needs to be. Our bodies evolved to be incredibly efficient with energy. For most of human history, food was scarce. So one of the primary drivers of evolution for humans was, how do we survive in scarcity? How do we survive around the scarcity? And one of the side effects or effects of that was, if we don't use it, we lose it. That's an old saying in fitness, right? So here's this energy expensive tissue called muscle. We're only going to keep it if we need it. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Like, why would I have a V10, 6-liter engine truck if I only need to cruise at 25 miles an hour all day long and haul nothing? Like, that's wasting gas, essentially, is what your body's saying. So it will only keep you as strong as you need to be, and it will continue to adapt in that direction if that's what you present it with. So if, as you get older, you become less and less active, your body's going to continue to meet that and adapt that way. So this is why, ask any doctor in the field, you take a patient who's having trouble walking, they know if they put them on a walker, they're going to decline even faster. You take someone who is having strength and mobility issues, they sit down more, their health's going to decline even faster. They know this. Doctors will tell you this. Like, and this is relatively recent. They'll say, we'll have you use a walker if necessary, but we would prefer you strengthen your body to try to not to use them, because we know your body will shape and mold it and adapt to that walker. And that's what ends up happening. So you have to give your body a reason to maintain vitality and strength and mobility. And if you're not doing that, your body will adapt in that way. And look, for anybody who's ever had a cast on a body part, you ever break a leg or an arm and have a cast on it? What does that arm or leg look like when you take it off 30 days later? That muscle is gone. I don't care how old you are. I remember when I dislocated my knee as a kid, took the cast off, and I freaked out when I looked at my leg because it was like the muscle was gone. Luckily, it came back because I was moving and active. But your body will adapt. So if you tell your body, we don't need mobility, we don't need strength, I don't need vitality, I don't need lots of cognitive function, it's going to start to decline. By the way, we separate the brain and the mind from the body, but it's the body. Your brain is in your body. Your mind is a result of lots of different things, but one of them is a healthy brain. If you allow your body to become unhealthy, your brain becomes unhealthy. It's a part of your body. It's all the same. So look at the connection between dementia and diabetes, obesity, mobility issues. Very strong connection. Very strong connection. So you want to keep a sharp mind, keep a healthy brain, keep a healthy body. It's really that simple. Now, I do also want to say, because my space communicates this terribly, you don't need to beat the crap out of yourself. You don't need to be, by the way, top athletes don't even work out like this all the time. The problem is we look at social media, or, when I was a kid, look at magazines, nobody's going to highlight their normal workouts. When I post my workouts, even on social media, I'm not showing you how I normally work out. I'm going to post my PRs, right? The ones I want to show off on. That's not how I work out all the time. The way you should train 80 to 90% of the time is cruising. There's that 10% of the time where you're pushing. That's about it. Even pro athletes train that way. They have an in-season and they have an off-season. So when you go train yourself appropriately. Most of your workouts should make you feel good, not like you beat the crap out of yourself. So if you're watching and listening to this, you're like, God, last time I tried to work out, I couldn't walk for 3 days, or I took that class and I almost threw up. Not appropriate. You should feel more energized after your workout. You should feel some challenge, but it should be appropriate to your current fitness level. So if you're doing nothing now, just do a little more than you're doing now, and that's enough to elicit change. If you get super fit, well, yeah, your workouts are going to have to be much harder to elicit any further change, but it needs to be appropriate. Too much is not only not appropriate, not only will it not get you there faster, but it might even reverse your progress. So there's a myth, if I work out harder, I get results faster. No, if you work out too hard, you won't get there at all.
Yeah, you see so many people feel like, if I do not leave the workout dripping in sweat, I didn't achieve
silly
anything.
Terrible. And we promote that, right? You go on, you look at fitness gurus and influencers, and they make you think that every workout is like one that you need to survive. No, that's crazy. If I trained my clients like that, I would have had no success as a trainer, both with clients that got great results and were able to maintain them forever, and just as a business person. Look, any trainer watching this right now, if you're a trainer or coach and you beat the crap out of your clients all the time, you're not going to last. I promise you. You're going to have clients who are going to drop like flies. Most workouts need to make you feel good. So you should leave the workout feeling better than you did walking into it, not feeling like you just survived. That's a 100% fact, and I'll stand by that all day long. And every good trainer and coach will back me up.
Are there any other core principles like that? You chatted about that a little bit last time, but just while we're on this topic, other things that you think are sort of key mistakes when people say, okay, listen, I know I want to prioritize fitness to build muscle. Muscle has all these protective elements, which you've talked about, including deeply linked to longevity, cancer protection, et cetera, et cetera. Other couple of handful of mistakes that you feel that people are making once they go down that route. So the first one was either you use it or you lose it, right? So just so many people don't even start because they're intimidated and they're like, oh, it's too late. I wish I started in my 40s, and people were 40. I wish I started in my 20s, and so on and so forth. Second one was, not thinking that a good or a successful workout is you beating yourself up every single time and being completely dead, right? I think a lot of fitness classes also, they become popular, especially in cities like LA or San Francisco or other places, because people are like, oh my gosh, that workout killed me, right? That was like a killer workout. And it's like a challenging thing for all their friends to, do together. Any other handful of things you'd add into that?
Yeah. So let me cover that. That shared suffering can feel cathartic when the reason you're working out is because you hate the way you look and you hate yourself. So that's why it feels so good, by the way. So someone watching right now is like, I love those workouts that make me feel like I'm gonna throw up. Probably because you looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I hate myself.
Wow.
I'm gross. I'm unattractive. I'm not sexy. So that painful beat yourself up workout was cathartic. But I'm going to tell you something right now. Keep that up long enough and you'll hate it and you'll rebel. And the rebellion is going to look like you're not going to work out at all. Same thing with diet. If you diet because you hate yourself, then diet becomes restrictive and it becomes a punishment. And at first it feels good. I don't deserve to eat that. I eat like crap all the time. I'm going to eat this way. Well, at some point you'll rebel. And you know what it looks like? It doesn't look like you go off your diet a little bit. It looks like you go way off your diet. If you track how people who approach diet that way, what it looks like when they go off, they don't eat one cookie. They eat a box of cookies and they feel terrible afterwards. So it's literally rebellion against that hating yourself model. So number one, work out because you love yourself, because you deserve to be healthy. You deserve to be cared for. Go to the gym or do your exercise or eat because you want to care for yourself. And that'll lead you in the right direction. Okay. Here's something that will probably blow people's minds, but it's 100% true. And I'll make the case. It's more effective to work out a little bit every day than it is to work out a lot a couple days a week. Even if everything's controlled, everything's the same. It's more effective. And here's number one reason why. Habits are better formed when we do them regularly versus when we do them sporadically. Our bodies also adapt better that way. And all growth is a form of adaptation. Even learning is a form of adaptation. So if I ask you, if I had you learn a language and you went to one class that was 7 hours long once a week versus you did 1 hour a day, which one do you think would impact you more positively?
Yeah,
right?
1 hour a day.
That's right. So if you want to really hack this is what you do. Get a pair of dumbbells or some resistance bands, keep them in your house, or maybe a suspension trainer. That's also pretty versatile. And instead of going to the gym twice a week for 45 minutes a day or whatever, do 10 to 15 minutes a day, every day. Go do 2 exercises. That's it. 2. Today I'm going to do squats and I'm going to do some push-ups. Tomorrow I'm going to do overhead press and I'm going to do some deadlifts. The next thing I'm going to do some crunches and I'm going to do some hip thrusts. That's it. 10 to 15 minutes a day. It's more effective psychologically. It'll develop, the behaviors will develop faster. It'll feel more like a habit and it's going to solidify faster. It's more convenient. All the busy people, the executives, the people who are really truly like working crazy hours, it's easier for them to find 15 minutes a day than it is for them to find an hour twice a week. That's just a fact. People are at home with their kids, same thing. You tell a mom or a dad who's at home with the kids, can you make time to go to the gym 2 or 3 days a week for an hour? Like, oh my God, I got to plan this out. Maybe find a babysitter. But if I say to them, hey, can you do like 10, 15 minutes a day? Oh yeah, I could do that. I could totally do that. So it's far easier to stay consistent. Also, the data suggests that the body adapts better that way as well. That the body actually adapts better with small doses than they do to less frequent, larger doses when it comes to strength training in particular. Fatigue is a strength training. It counters a lot of the benefits of strength training. And that's why you do sets, by the way. This is why people who when you do strength training properly, you do a set and you rest. When fatigue sets in, it stops becoming strength training. It becomes more cardiovascular training. So that might be another reason why. So yeah, try that out. So literally 2 exercises a day, 10 to 15 minutes. Keep the intensity moderate. Watch what happens to your body. You'll be blown away. It will literally trip you out. And it also feels better because 10 to 15 minutes feels invigorating. 45 minutes can sometimes feel a little bit like too much work.
So when I turned 40, which was last year, I got serious about strength training, building muscle mass, and started making it a regular part of my routine and was very consistent for like 9 months. Took a little tiny break this summer, traveling, other things like that, but was working out 3 to 4 days a week. Feel so much more confident in the gym. Body composition totally transformed and put on about, almost about 9 pounds of lean muscle mass in the process and dropped a bunch of body fat percentage as well. So now I'm at a different place than when I was starting. So I want to kind of go through a few different cohorts of people. So for that person that is literally like, okay, yes, I know I saw you the first time on the podcast. I've been watching your content. I like the idea of, 10 to 15 minutes every day. I got the dumbbells. What's the best way for them to put or follow some sort of program? Because you hear them, you hear individuals saying, I literally don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. So are there self-guided things? Do you recommend that they follow stuff on YouTube? Have you guys at Mind Pump put together sort of introductory programs for people?
Yeah. So we have a program called MAPS 15, which is 15 minutes a day, and it uses a suspension trainer to keep it convenient. There is an advanced version that uses free weights as well for people who like.
What's a suspension trainer?
Suspension like a TRX.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So you could, God, now you can get them on Amazon for like, I think $50, and you can hook it over your door or something stable. And then the thing about suspension trainers that are really cool is they're appropriate for beginners all the way to advanced, because you change the angle and I can make a push-up super, super beginner, or I can make it very advanced for somebody who's really strong, just simply by changing the angle of the handle. So they're super appropriate, very convenient. So you could follow a program like MAPS 15, very easy, convenient. If you don't want to invest in a program, you want to kind of try it out, literally pick 1 to 2 exercises and just practice those and try to change them up each time you work out. The best exercises to pick from are some type of a squatting movement. There's lots of variations of squats, okay? But some type of a squatting movement, some type of a horizontal pressing movement, push-up, a bench press, a dumbbell press, a band press, something like that. Some type of an overhead or vertical pressing movement. So like an overhead dumbbell press or with bands or something like that. Some type of a pulling movement. A row would be a great example. There's lots of variations of different kinds of rows. And something that involves stabilization of the core or something with rotation. So like a plank or a crunch or what's called a chop with a band. And that's it. And there's lots of variations of those. And so you could pick from those 5 or 6 movements, pick 2 of them, do them on Monday, pick another 2, do them on Tuesday, pick another 2, do them on Wednesday, and just kind of cycle through. Now, MAPS 15 is much more meticulously programmed and does make a difference. But if you're just getting started, you'll do fine by just doing what I said, where you just pick a couple exercises. It really isn't that crazy. And then focus on technique. So you are doing skills. So don't think that the end is, I need to have sore legs or I need to feel a burn in this muscle. Don't think of it that way. Imagine you're practicing a sport. So I'm telling you to free throw on one day, and I'm telling you to throw a 3-pointer on another day. I'm telling you to dribble. If I were telling you to practice to dribble, you wouldn't just dribble until you were fatigued. You would practice the technique. So treat this like techniques. Okay, so Sal said a squat. I'm going to do a body weight squat. Don't just do them until you're tired. Watch yourself in the mirror. Pull up a video on YouTube. We have Mind Pump TV. We have every exercise I just listed is on there. You can watch us teach it. And then practice and perfect that movement. Work within your capabilities. So if you go too low and it hurts, that's okay. Don't go that low then. And then each time you practice, see if you can go a little lower. Okay. Practice and perfect the technique. That what I just said right now will guide most people for a while before they need any further type of programming.
Yeah, like literally people could probably do that for at least 6 months or a year.
Totally.
And not only see results, but feel more confident to get to like the next level.
They'll see great results within that period, like great results. You'll get stronger, especially in the first year. Your mobility, connection, control, and strength will improve almost weekly for probably the first year if you just did that. So every week you'll notice like, oh, that feels easier. Wow, I did another rep. Oh, I could go a little lower. Wow, that feels really good. So barring any injury or anything like that, yeah, you'll see progress. They call them newbie gains in the fitness world.
So that's 10 to 15 minutes every day.
That's it.
Right?
Yep.
7 days a week?
I 6 or 7 is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I like 7 just because it keeps the momentum. It's if you don't beat yourself up and you do what I just said, it'll be appropriate for most people because you'll self-gauge the intensity based on your fitness level. I personally like to start the day that way. Less things get in the way. So it's like wake up and do them. But any time of the day is perfectly fine.
You touched on this last time, but you are a big fan of making sure that, especially if you can, starting off your morning with protein.
Yeah.
Do you want to habit stack that along with these sort of newbie gains
Yeah.
that somebody might be getting from
love
practicing some of these resistant?
I love what you just said about habit stacking. Habit stacking is a behavioral approach to trying to implement a new skill or behavior. And what you do is you attach it to something that you already do. So if I said, I want you to walk for 30 minutes a day versus walk for 10 minutes after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What you'll find is people will be more consistent if they do it with breakfast, lunch, if they attach it to the thing that they already do. Okay. So if you need to do that, that's great. So if you do the 2 exercises and you're like, I think it's better off if I do 1 exercise after breakfast and 1 after lunch. Okay. Perfectly fine. Really, I don't care how you put it together. It doesn't make a difference, but habit stacking's a phenomenal way to do it. Attaching it to waking up and making it part of your morning routine is just another way of doing that. You could do it before bed too. I just find that to be more challenging for people typically.
So if they wanted to incorporate the protein aspect of it, what do you tell your clients? Now we're kind of combining dietary interventions to improve satiety, which is a big part of what you were talking about last time, higher protein diets, what they have impact on. So a lot of people are not used to sort of, or have questions about like, wow, like, how do I mentally sort of wrap my head around sort of starting to include more protein in my diet?
Yeah. So if you do this in the morning, you're probably better off eating afterwards. I know that people will say eat before or whatever, and there's personal preference here, but I would eat afterwards. And what they find, the data shows that when people exercise and regularly, they're more likely to make better food choices. I think it's just you're in that same mentality. But yeah, back to the protein. Starting your day off with protein has been shown to reduce cravings and control blood sugar throughout the day better, regardless of what else you eat. So if everything's the same, but this person eats more of their protein in the morning, this person doesn't, you're less likely to have cravings, energy crashes, irritability, all the things associated with blood sugar spikes and drops. Also, eating when I mentioned high protein diet, I should have gone into the details. High protein, the way I define it, or the way that the data defines it, is about 1 gram of protein per pound of target body weight. So take whatever your target body weight is, aim for that in grams of protein. That's not easy to do. So I want people to know protein is very satiety producing. So if you're a 130-pound female and let's say your target body weight is 120 pounds, eating 120 grams of protein, you'll find is going to really crush your appetite. So you want to eat a good amount of it in the morning. Otherwise you're behind the 8 ball. So 120 grams of protein, divide that by 3 meals. You have your 40 grams of protein or whatever for breakfast. Eat that first. If you don't, you'll find it's going to be really challenging throughout the day. Protein shakes can be helpful at, meeting those needs, but I always encourage people to get this through whole natural foods. By the way, protein shakes are processed food. So, all the health food categories of processed foods are still processed foods. In fact, the top selling health foods are the ones that taste the best. And that'll tell you a lot about that market.
Yeah. Number one seller at Whole Foods in the food section is pizza.
Yeah, of course. Right. Or the best tasting protein shake, right?
Yeah. So let's say somebody's been doing that, whether it's that program, they've been doing that for about a year. They've started to notice these gains or they've been doing something on their own, something similarly. And they're like, you know what? I want to now kick it up a notch. And it's a journey and a lifestyle that I want to embark to really sort of get into the best shape of my life. Not from a standpoint of like, oh, I want like 6-pack abs or I want this, but I want to feel strong and I want to continue to feel strong as I age, but also maintain the mobility, flexibility, etc. What kind of program should that person be thinking about now to be embarking on? If this, the MAPS 15, which we have the link into the show notes, people can check it out on the Mind Pump website. What kind of program should that individual be looking at? And do they need to be thinking about working with like a personal trainer?
Yeah. So, okay. I'm glad you said that. A good trainer or coach is worth their weight in gold. Okay. Because fitness and nutrition especially nutrition, they can be very challenging things to change and implement and keep on a consistent basis. And a good trainer or coach isn't just somebody that has knowledge on exercise and diet, but they're also really good guides. They're going to guide you on this journey. And a good coach or trainer's goal is to get you to be able to do this on your own for the rest of your life. Okay. So when you hire somebody that's really good, the success rates with really good trainers and coaches is the best, period. End of story. So, and you don't need to work with them all the time. You could do like once a week or, twice a month. Obviously, if you worked with them every time you worked out, even better. But they're worth their weight in gold. So I highly suggest finding someone who's good, hiring them. They'll be able to coach you through this process. Okay, so let's say you start with the 15 minutes a day. There's so much you can do within that 15 minutes before you have to move to anything more advanced that you'll be okay for a long time. So like, for example, increase the amount of reps. That can happen for a while, right? Increase the load. Well, I went from body weight squats to higher rep body weight squats to holding dumbbells for body weight squats to putting a barbell on my back with body weight squats and then adding more weight to the bar. Like we could go a long way with just that, right? It could be, I could only squat down this deep. Now I'm squatting on this deep. Now I can go down all the way. Now, so the ways you could advance your workouts within the context of what I just said, you could take that for years before you do anything else, like add more exercises or add more frequency or anything like that. So, and I want to be very clear with that because I think people, they'll do something like that, be like, okay, I'm ready. And they think that the next step is some crazy progression into something else. You could go, I trained people for years where they would start with me 2 days a week and we would work out for 5 years progressing with that before I moved them to 3 days a week. So it's not as crazy as you think. And what you'll find is if you do this right and you work with your body, the progressions are not going to be that hard to figure out. Literally, you'll be like, I did 10. I think I could do 12. Now I did 12. Now I think I could do 14. Now I'm going to hold a dumbbell. Now I'm going to do it a little faster, whatever, or slower, or pause at the bottom just to increase or, make the challenge more. But, I think we offer now something like 17 or 18 different programs that you could choose from. A trainer will help put one together for you that's individualized. Nothing will beat that.
So people can sign up online and they have like a virtual consultation with a trainer, or is it?
No. So we just sell programs.
Yeah. So you can just go on there, buy a program.
Yeah. And even in MAPS 15, so with the suspension trainer, you could progress the suspension trainer to make it more and more challenging. Look, I'm going to give you an example. Okay. So we created MAPS 15 partially because we saw a need for people who just have a tough time carving out 45 minutes or an hour to go to the gym. Also, the data on frequency when all other controls are taken care of showed that it was more effective. You see this with like Olympic lifters. they're practicing exercises super frequently versus doing one long, super hard type of workout. I also experimented with this myself. When we created MAPS 15, I did a more advanced version where I would spend about 25 minutes, and I use barbells and dumbbells, but still 25 minutes a day. Okay. And I posted it on my social media. At 43 years old, I hit a PR in deadlift, like stronger than I was in my early 30s when I hit the previous PR. So there's a lot you could do with what I just said. And it's funny because we created that program. We have advanced people following it, and they're like, I didn't think I'd get better results than I did what I was doing before, but I must have been doing too much, and I'm getting, far better results. So think about it this way. If I told you to dig a hole as fast as you could use a spoon and work real hard, but you'd probably be smarter if you got a shovel or got a backhoe to the work for you. So a good workout is just that. It's effective. A good workout isn't necessarily the harder one or the longer one.
So let's talk about the diet side. Remind us again about the protein, and then walk us through any other dietary principles that are part of your world.
Yeah. So if you look at studies, so we'll start at the top here. Okay. Like big picture. If you look at studies where they take obese individuals and have them see a dietitian or a nutritionist or someone who gives them a diet, and you compare them to obese individuals who see a therapist, okay? The people who see a therapist have a better success rate than the people who go and see a dietitian or a nutritionist.
Wow.
Okay. What does that tell us? That tells us that we're focusing far too much on the ones and zeros, like I said before, the program, eat this, eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that, and less on the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I driven this way? Why am I reaching for these things? Why is it so hard for me? Okay. And that's the thing that we need to start with. So let's start big picture first, but then I'll kind of zero in because it gets a little esoteric at first. So first off, we all have a relationship with food. And our relationship has been developed through society, how we grew up, how we connect to food during different, times, whether we're stressed or angry or sad or happy or whatever. Some foods mean certain things to us. Other foods mean other things to us. Here's a silly example. That's funny, right? If I were to tell you to list 5 breakfast foods and 5 dinner foods, I bet, you took 100 people, they would be very similar, right? How did that happen? Why are eggs and bacon a breakfast food? Or why is cereal a breakfast food, right? Why is like steak and potato a dinner food? Well, because we developed that relationship, and largely through marketing, that told us that some foods are something and other foods are other things, right? If I say popcorn, when do you eat popcorn? That's when I go to the movies, right? So this is something that we need to become a bit aware of. Most of us have developed a relationship with food that revolves around palatability. Palatability is the top thing that we use to develop our relationship with food, okay? Is how palatable something is. In fact, most people watching this right now have probably never even felt what it feels like to be hungry. I know people are like, what are you talking about? I get hungry every day at noon or whatever. Not really. Hunger doesn't set in until about 48 hours of fasting. That's when you start to feel, anyone who's ever fasted who's done like a spiritual fast where they go for, 48 or 72 hours will tell you, it feels very different to feel hungry. So we don't know what that feels like. We know what it feels like to eat things that taste good, make us feel good, and that's kind of about it. Most of us don't even know that certain foods make us feel other ways. Like I used to get clients who would tell me that they would take antacids every day at noon because I just get heartburn. It's just something that I have. And then eventually we realize it's the bagel that you eat every morning. They never connected the two. They had no idea that it was that caused that. Okay. So our relationship to food is extremely important. And I'll start with this because that's a complex one, but I'll start with this. Are you trying to eat healthier or better because you hate yourself? Or are you doing it because you love yourself? Okay. Most of us do it because we hate ourselves. I hate the way I look. I hate the way I feel. I'm inadequate. I'm lazy and whatever. So I'm going to change how I eat. If you go into changing your diet from that standpoint, food becomes restrictive. Food becomes a reward. It becomes a punishment. It's not enjoyable to eat quote unquote unhealthy. It's tyrannical. It's what I do to me because I hate me and I'm bad and don't have discipline or whatever. And so this is how I'm going to eat now. So here's a clue to that, by the way. If somebody's on a diet and you offer them, let's say, a food that's not on their diet, like, hey, you want a cookie? They'll respond with, no, I can't. No, I can't. I'm on a diet right now. Or no, I can't. Like, what do you mean you can't? Of course you can. You don't want to, or you want to. It's very different, right? Now let's define what I said about love, self-love. It's not a feeling. I say that because people are like, what do you mean love myself? I don't always love myself. Of course you don't. But it's an action. If you think of it as an action, that's really what love is, right? Like I have kids. I don't always like my kids, but I always love them. Mm-hmm. I try to do what's best for them. So think in terms of eating healthy from the standpoint of you're trying to care for yourself. Start there. It's very important because then eating healthy doesn't feel restrictive. It doesn't feel like a punishment. It feels like self-care. That's so important. Okay. I can't stress this enough. If you don't start from that standpoint, this is always going to feel tyrannical. This is always going to feel like you're white knuckling it. And at some point you will rebel, and rebellion against tyranny looks like this: binging or going way off. Like people don't go off their diet by eating a slice of pizza. Nobody goes off their diet by eating one slice of pizza. Everybody goes off their diet by eating so much pizza they're uncomfortable and they're sick on the couch. Like what just happened, right? So start with the standpoint of, okay, I want to care for myself. I want to eat in a way that cares for me. So let's start there first.
And just to pause you there, if somebody's listening and is like, you know what, I want that, and I also know I'm not there and I need that, then is that where you're saying, hey, maybe we find a therapist first? Let's find some support around you to help you get there. If you genuinely feel that you're stuck and you can't get there alone, like you're so spiraling downward, or you just have so much self-loathing, or maybe you're stuck in depression and you don't know how to get out, is that where you would say, okay, let's find a therapist to help you so that you can actually at least start to step into some elements of self-love?
Yeah, the greatest success I had with clients were when it was me and they had a therapist at the same time. It was the success rate went through the roof when they had both of us working with them.
The physical and the mental.
It was like, oh, this person's gonna.
I mean, we've done so many episodes about tackling depression through movement, through improving blood sugar, through metabolic health, etc. So I 100% believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. But, let's say, okay, I don't want to go that route. Just start with what I'm saying. Okay, I want to care for myself. Now, I do want to be clear. Palatability and the enjoyment of eating is also a value. So I'm not saying it's not a value, okay? I'm just saying it's not the only value. So what's happening is we're basing our decisions off of one value, one true understanding. It's like picking a partner to marry based off of looks and looks alone. Could you imagine the disaster? Well, I know. I mean, a lot of people have that disaster, right? Where it's just looks. You don't care about anything else. It's just about how attractive they are, right? That's obviously going to cause a problem. So palatability, yes, there's value there. But there's other values that we haven't learned to either develop or even acknowledge that we need to pay attention to, okay? So how does this food make me feel energy-wise? When do I reach for this food? How does it affect my digestion, my skin? By the way, you're going to have to pay attention to these things at first before they start to become automatic, because most of us are not even aware that these foods affect us in particular ways. How does it affect my sleep? How do I feel while I eat it? So start paying attention to those types of things as well. And then let's do this. Let's look at food and let's realize that one of the biggest challenges we have with eating properly is it's really hard not to overeat. It's just really hard not to overeat. Okay, now I'm going to add something to that. When we eat foods that are designed and engineered to make us overeat, it's actually not normal, or should I say, not typical or common to overeat when you eat foods that are not designed to do that. A lot of people don't realize that. There's this myth that humans are eating machines. If you just put food in front of us, we'll eat until we're all obese and sick. That's not true. We have natural systems of satiety that we evolved with that tell us when it's time to stop eating. Overeating 5,000 years ago had its own risk. Now, it's probably not obesity because it's probably real hard to be obese, But if you overate to the point of gastric distress or issues, that meant death. Okay. So we have natural systems of satiety that we've hijacked because food scientists have done an incredible job at designing foods that overcome that. And we have studies now. Some of the best studies in nutrition that exist are some of the studies I'm about to talk about in terms of how foods affect these systems of satiety. So they've got studies now where, and I say these are some of the best studies because the studies on nutrition, a lot of them can be quite cloudy because they require self-reporting and they're not controlled well. And gosh, you tell somebody, how many tomatoes did you eat over the last month? It's like, okay, I don't know, 5 or whatever. But if you could put people in a lab and watch them and count what they're eating, now we're getting a better, more accurate picture. Well, they've done studies where they take groups of people, they put them in a lab, and this group over here has unlimited access to heavily processed foods. These are engineered foods, okay? Heavily processed foods. And then this group over here has unlimited access to whole natural foods that, or maybe one ingredient, apples, bananas, nuts, meat, that kind of stuff, eggs, right? So heavily processed foods, whole natural foods. Then they watch them. By the way, they also, for people who are like, oh, it's the macros. No. They also have similar macro breakdowns. They actually did a pretty good job with this. It wasn't like they all had all sugar over here.
Sure.
It was a pretty similar breakdown. They watched them and observed. Then they took those groups, and I love this, they switched rooms, okay? So who knows? Maybe this group over here just eats more and this one. No, they switched rooms. And they've done several studies like this. Here's what they found. On average, people eating heavily processed foods will eat daily 600 more calories a day.
Wow.
On average. That's a lot. That's like 2.5 hours of running for the average person on a treadmill to burn 600 calories, okay? Why is that? Heavily processed foods, they're not inherently unhealthy, although most of them are. They're not inherently evil or anything like that. It's just the vast majority of research and development that went into those foods, the vast majority of money and production that went into those foods went into making them hyper palatable. Okay? If you ever talk to a food scientist, they'll explain this to you. Like they've got it down to the point. Like they know the right combination of salty, sweet, texture, sound it makes when you crunch on it, residue that it leaves on your fingers, the sound the bag makes when you open it, the color on the bag, like all of that, that'll make you eat more than you would if it had, let's say, a different combination. I had Chris Kresser on the show years ago. He's a phenomenal example. He said, if I gave you 5 plain boiled potatoes, plain, and I told you to eat them all, and in 30 minutes, would you be able to? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'd probably gag. And he says, well, if I gave you a family-sized bag of potato chips, would you be able to do it? And I said, yeah. And he goes, same amount of potatoes.
Wow.
That's how palatable potato chips are in comparison to the potatoes. So why am I saying this? If you're going to try and do what I'm saying, it's going to be really hard if you're eating foods that have been engineered and, billions of dollars over decades have been spent on making you overeat them. Good luck. So
would you also put into that category, not as bad, but they're, if you go to like Whole Foods, still one of the top sellers is like potato chips. Yeah. They might be fried in avocado oil, but they're still potato chips at the end of the day. So there's even still a lot of quote unquote health food that has sort of picked up. And now a lot of these health companies are being sold to bigger companies and they're getting, all the same things. And also people are just inherently, they know that, wow, if you add a little bit more tapioca syrup to these gummies, even though if they have vitamin D in them, just people are going to keep on eating them because they're like super sweet and they're fun to eat. So also in this category, not to just throw like the big food under the bus, is a lot of sort of, heavily processed, quote unquote, health food.
You hit the nail on the head. Okay, look, markets, right? We live in a market-based society, and there's wonderful benefits to living in a market-based society. But markets do something exceptionally well. They give us what we want. They don't give us what we need. They give us what we want, okay? The top-selling health foods, the top-selling protein bars are not the ones that are the healthiest. They're the ones that taste the best. Okay, that's it. Fact. And I know this is my space. I'm in the fitness space. If I want to make a protein powder or a protein bar or a healthy snack, the way that I'm going to sell the most of that product is by making it taste the best. Okay, by making it the most palatable. Okay, so you hit the nail on the head. Heavily processed foods are designed to make you overeat. Okay, period, end of story. If they comprise a majority of your diet, good luck trying to eat the appropriate amount. This is how powerful it is. One of my favorite things to do with clients, I love doing this, and I challenge anybody watching this to try this right now. I would do this right here. I'd say, I don't want you to eat any less. Here's what I want you to do. Don't eat heavily processed foods. Just eat whole natural foods. Eat as much as you want. Let's just start there. And everybody would look at me like, what do you mean as much as I want? I was like, I don't care. Eat as much steak, rice, potatoes, fish, eggs, fruit. Eat as much as you want.
All of it.
Eat as much as you want. And let's just start there. And they'd come see, and then, we would track their progress or whatever. And, within a couple months, I'd be like, wow, you lost 7 pounds of body fat. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. Wow. Oh my God. I'm like full. I'm like eating until I'm full every single day. And they think that there was some weird chemical in the heavily processed food that would make them gain body fat and all that stuff. And I'd say, no, you're eating less calories. And then I'd have them track. And then sure enough, they were eating, 500, 600, 700 less calories a day because they were eating foods that your body is aligned with. When you eat whole natural foods, your satiety will kick in when it's supposed to, unlike heavily processed foods that it's like a lag, okay? So that's one thing right there. Protein is another one. Protein is very, very satiety inducing. If you eat your body weight in grams of protein, and for people who are overweight, use your target body weight. I weigh about 210 pounds. Eating 210 grams of protein per day from whole natural foods is hard. I know, I do this every single day. It's like, oh my God, I am like full and I'm at 160 grams of protein. Like this is really tough. If you're a 110 pound female, 150 pound female, 170 pound male, try it. Try doing it for 5 days in a row, prioritize it because it's going to be hard otherwise, and watch what happens. It is satiety inducing like none other. We have all the data and studies to support this. Do this from whole natural foods, not protein powders. Protein powders are a hack that kind of make it easier, okay? Great for people who are, bodybuilders, but the average person, I'd say only use protein powders.
Even like a grass-fed whey, that doesn't have a lot of fillers and stuff inside of it.
Here's how you should use protein powders. If you don't hit your protein target at the end of the day, go ahead and throw in a protein powder.
But so it's a supplemental, but it shouldn't be the base.
No, because one of the benefits of protein is it produces satiety. Drinking a 30-gram protein shake from whey isn't going to produce satiety like eating 30 grams of protein from chicken.
Sure.
It just doesn't.
Sure.
Even if you take out the fat or whatever from the chicken, it just doesn't. So avoid heavily processed foods. Eat your body weight in grams of protein, or aim for that and prioritize that. Okay, that's the other one. Also eat, well-cooked vegetables. That's another thing. But really everything else is splitting hairs or small potatoes, I should say, in comparison to what I just said. Literally, the average client will lose 10 to 15 pounds just by avoiding heavily processed foods and eating as much whole foods as they want. It was like clockwork. I would get them to lose 10 pounds and they feel like they were eating so much food, they were so stuffed. And I loved it because it made me look like a wizard, like I was some like magical trainer. And then I'll break it down and explain to them. Another one is to drink a lot of water. It's funny. In the hardcore muscle building space, there's a lot of what they would call bro science. Okay, so you make fun of it online, like, oh, that's bro science. Some of it is rooted in some truth. They just didn't know how to explain it. The way they would explain it was bro science. But the results were real.
It still worked. It's just like the explanation may not be accurate.
Yeah. So here's a good one. Drink a half a gallon to a gallon of water every day. That you'll notice some weight loss effects from doing that. Okay, what's happening? Is the water flushing fat out of my body? Is it? No, it's not doing any of that. You drink that much water, you're not drinking anything else. That's the bottom line. You just end up drinking just water.
And water itself kind of makes you feel full sometimes.
Kind of helps you feel full. Slightly being dehydrated or not optimizing your water intake tends to make you want to eat more. When I would get clients to do that as well, we would also notice some weight loss from doing that. So these are just small things that I like to say because they're effective in their sustainability. And I love things that make people feel like they're not doing a lot. Like, okay, I'm just doing this, but what the heck is going on? Versus, you know, when people follow diets, it's like this really hard thing I got to try and do every single day. I mean, those things right there that I just listed make a huge impact. Oh, here's one other thing. You want to cut your calories by 10 to 15% every day? This is really easy. Okay. When you eat, don't eat and watch TV, be on your phone, be on a computer, or do anything else.
I've heard you talk about this. Explain it.
Oh, studies are great on this. When we eat while distracted, we eat 10 to 15% more calories.
And everybody's eating and watching TV right
Nowadays,
now, looking at their phone, whatever.
Nowadays, everybody's distracted, right? If you just did that, you can count on your calories dropping enough to see weight loss. So literally, when you eat, sit down, nothing else around me, and just eat.
So question on that, just to like clarify. So, you know, people eat with other people. Is that a form of distraction? Like, hey, you and I are enjoying lunch together and we're having a conversation while we're eating. Is that a distraction?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't put that in the same category because the health benefits.
You're not like completely tuning out. You're still
correct
in it. You're present. You're not like checked out watching this thriller or whatever.
100%. You're still aware, but also I never want to negate the health benefits of connecting with other people. I mean, tremendous health benefits with doing that. So yeah, you sit down and you eat with someone. By the way, you ever watch people eat together nowadays? They don't eat together. They eat at the same time, but they're on their phones or doing what I said earlier. But if you're just like doing what we're doing right now and we're eating, far less likely to overeat. Plus we get to connect and we have a good time. So,
which is another nutrient.
100%. I mean, that's kind of it right there. You know, focus on, chewing your food really well sounds so stupid, but studies will show that'll drop your calories 10%. Like these are ways to alter your behavior. Your behavior is what drives what you do. You don't alter your behavior by telling yourself to do these things. Then you're fighting these natural behaviors. It's like, okay, I got to cut my calories by 600, but I'm going to eat heavily processed foods. Whoa, that's going to be a struggle. What if I cut those foods out, ate as much as I wanted? What happens? I eat 600 less calories a day. So this is the way I would communicate it.
It's like going uphill versus downhill.
Totally.
Are you pushing uphill and you're pushing a boulder versus, you know, are you going downhill with the natural momentum and the way that your behaviors are going? Still takes some behavioral change. But again, it goes back to the beginning of the conversation. This is going to be much more sustainable and you're more likely to hit that initial goal faster in the first place as well.
Absolutely. You're also going to do this over time. You start to change, you start to develop a new relationship with food. I can't stress this enough. If you truly enjoy eating healthy, are you ever going to struggle with it? You know, people who aren't in the space that we're in, like we love it. We love what we do. That's why we do this, right? They don't relate to us when we say things like, oh, I love eating healthy. Oh, it's so great. Like I love eating, like they look at us like, what are you talking about? Like, that salad and that bowl of vegetables and whatever, that's not as good as a pizza. Like, what are you talking about? Like, first off, you and I know how tasty a pizza is. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's not all the enjoyment that I get from food. I've developed a relationship with food now where I can enjoy pizza sometimes, but most of the time I enjoy the other things I've become aware of around food. And that makes me want to eat those foods more. That makes me want to eat those foods even more than the slice of pizza, for example, because I know what comes along with that pizza now. I'm aware of it. Oh, my digestion's gonna be off. I'm gonna be sluggish. I'm not gonna feel as sharp. Is it worth it? Occasionally it's worth it because I'm with my friends and we're hanging out, but most of the time it's kind of not. So you become more aware over time and you start to develop this relationship where you're like, wow, I really, I kind of crave, this healthy thing and I enjoy eating it. And then someone offers you a cookie and you say, I kind of don't want that cookie. Like, how great would that be?
Yeah.
I kind of don't want that. Again, it doesn't mean you all of a sudden find the cookie to taste gross. You know it tastes good. You just don't want it like you did before because you have a broader, wider understanding of all of the values of food. And this 100% can happen. For people who are watching this right now who are saying, that sounds crazy, look, food companies, food manufacturers know this. This is why marketing exists. Beer commercials, they never show somebody with a hangover. It's always at the beach and you're having a great time and you got the girls in the car and it looks great, right? They create these relationships for you because that goes into your decision-making process. There is a learning process that goes along with this. And most of us, when it comes to food in particular, are in the first stage, which is we're just unconsciously incompetent. We just don't know what we don't know. Now, you're watching this and you're listening, and let's say you start applying some of the stuff, well, you're going to move into the second stage, which can be intimidating at first, which is you become consciously incompetent. This is where people sometimes get overwhelmed. Like, oh my gosh, all this stuff I don't know. Like, you're now aware of what you don't know. But stay the course. Give yourself, start with what is realistic for you, because it does build off of that. Don't go beyond what's realistic. That's a big mistake. And then you move to the third phase, which is conscious competence. That just means you have to think about what you're doing. You have to think about what you put in your mouth and, oh yeah, how does that make me feel? And, oh yeah, I should eat this. And, you know, I noticed my performance drop in the gym, and these are the foods that make me feel better with performance. And this makes me not sleep as good. So I think I'm not going to eat this tonight. But then when you do that over time, you move into the final stage, which is where you want to be, which you can get to, which is you become unconsciously competent. It's just how you live, how you eat. And people ask you, how do you do it? And it seems so easy. And it's so possible. I want people to know that right now. It is so possible. You do not have to become a fitness fanatic to get there. It's a place everybody can get. It's just, we've never practiced it. We don't know how to practice it. My space communicates it terribly. You know, the fitness space, the health space communicates it terribly. They're trying to promise you the quick fix. They're trying to prey on your insecurities. They're telling you, take this pill or follow this crazy diet or do this thing and in 30 days and all that stuff. And no. It's possible. It takes a little bit of time. But if you do it the way that I'm explaining it, you'll get there. And then it's going to be to the point where it's just the way you live.
You've had, different zigs and zags in your journey because you've been in this space for a while. You got into the whole fitness world because you felt like you were a skinny kid and you wanted to put on weight and muscle and other things. And you had other zigs and zags. But when did it fundamentally change for you to have this positive relationship with food, which also related to this positive relationship with yourself, that you didn't hate yourself? Not that you were perfect all the time. Yeah. We all have moments, but that you weren't leading primarily because you had a negative view of yourself, but that you were going downhill. You were moving forward. You had momentum in your life because you loved yourself. You had a positive relationship.
Yeah.
When did things change?
Yeah. So I want to first communicate this so I don't come across like I'm preaching from some high place. This is the human condition. Okay, so everybody will struggle forever. This is always going to happen. This is always something you're going to work on. It's a journey. There is no destination to get to, and then you're done. You know yourself better than anybody, which means you know all your imperfections and the negative attributes that you have and what you could have done better. So this is always going to be something that you're going to have to visit and work on. So I want to be very clear with that, and I still do. Okay, but it definitely gets better over time. You become more aware over time, and two things for me. First off, thankfully, I feel very blessed that I always really cared truly about the clients that I trained. And now why am I saying that? That drove me to be a great trainer for them way before I was a great trainer for myself. It was so much easier to care about these people than it was to really view myself in that way. But through that process, it became really hard not to be like, why don't I apply that to myself? And I'm saying this to them, but why do I feel this way about myself? But I really, really cared about my clients. So that always drove me. I always wanted to do better. I always wanted to find ways to figure out ways to get this to become something they do forever and develop this relationship with it. And to the point where they didn't do this up and down and they felt good about it and they continued to enjoy this journey and stay on it for the rest of their lives. So that really helped me. But I had my own health scare or my own, there was a period there where I had to face the music, and I was forced to look at myself and say, what the heck am I doing to myself? This was in my early 30s. So remember, I'd been personally, working out and all that stuff since I was 14. And you said it earlier. It all started from being very insecure about my body. I think a lot of people start exercising from that standpoint. I was a very skinny kid and felt inadequate, wanted to build muscle. And so I pursued it from that standpoint, which led me to do a lot of unhealthy things to my body, overtrain, take supplements in ways that weren't healthy, even at one point use designer steroids, which, there was a period there where you can get them over the counter. And I did all that, all these things that were not healthy in the pursuit of, kind of trying to solve this insecurity, which anybody who's ever dealt with an insecurity knows that there's no solving it. It's like a bottomless pit, right? But I did these things for myself. Meanwhile, I'm caring about my clients, learning these things and becoming a great trainer. Well, anyway, in my early 30s, my body rebelled in a very big way. I developed digestive issues that I couldn't figure out. Lost a lot of weight, lost something like 13 pounds of lean body mass. I felt terrible. All the healthy things that I thought were healthy were no longer working for me, losing strength in the gym. That's hitting my ego, right? I developed this shell of muscle because of this insecurity. And went to the doctor and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They were going to test me for Crohn's disease. Scary, really scary time because I had developed this kind of persona and this business around it. Like, who am I if my health goes south? Thankfully, I was surrounded by really, really good health practitioners. At the time, I had a wellness studio. And in my wellness studio, we had trainers like myself, but then I had people who did hormone and gut testing. I had people who did mindfulness type exercise. I had physical therapists in there. So these were really, really smart people in their own spaces. And I had worked with them and appreciated them and valued what they did because I could see the benefit they brought clients, especially when clients worked with all of us. I could see like these people are just thriving working with these people. But for me, not for me, I'm just going to lift weights and eat a lot of protein, take supplements and that kind of stuff. Well, here I am withering away. I feel like, absolute crap. And I sat down with them and I said, look, I'm desperate. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I will do whatever you tell me. I will do whatever you tell me. I am done trying to figure this out myself. And, I'm scared. So what should I do? And I did some gut testing, food sensitivity testing. I drastically reduced the intensity and frequency of my workouts. I focused on sleep. I cut all these other foods out of my diet. I started looking at, my dysbiosis I had in my gut. So I started working on things to treat things like SIBO. I stopped weighing myself. I stopped looking in the mirror. Those were all very triggering for me. Because I was just like, I just need to fix this. I just need to fix this. And I need my health. Without my health, like it doesn't matter. And I did this for about a year. It was a slow process. And my body did slowly and then eventually heal through that process. And there was this, and I did a really good job of not paying attention to my reflection. It was a big trigger. Like if I looked in the mirror, I knew that it would push me to do the things that I had done before. So I just completely avoided looking at mirrors. Well, there was this moment where I was at a friend's house and it was a pool party and we were all swimming and having a good time. And I went to use the restroom and there were like two mirrors in the bathroom. So one would reflect off the other one. And I caught a glimpse of myself from an angle that I'm not used to. So for a split second, I was able to objectively view my reflection. Split second. I don't know if you've ever done that where you see yourself and okay. So you don't have that subjective filter, right? And I looked at myself just for a split second. And then I had this crazy, it was this really, really weird experience. And then I looked in the mirror and I realized I looked better than I had looked before, ever before. I thought, oh my God, this whole time I was chasing this ideal, this aesthetic ideal. And through the process of just trying to be healthy, I actually got a lot further than I ever did before. And that's when it dawned on me, like chasing health was going to give me a great deal of aesthetics. Chasing aesthetics, I would eventually lose my health and then lose my aesthetics. And so it really did change how I communicate health and fitness. Actually, it helped shape and form the voice that I have now on my show and how I communicate things. But that was my personal experience. And, I'd be lying if I said it's not always a struggle. You're always, life is always going to challenge you in ways where, it's easy to hate yourself. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have a business. And, but I'm much more aware than I ever was before on whether or not I'm doing things from a place of hate or care. And I think I can at least stop myself before it gets too bad and move in the right direction.
What about things that you do yourself or with clients that are now the bonus on top of the foundation, right? You've already covered some of the foundational things in this episode. We did a lot on the previous episode as well. Not eating excess calories, especially from ultra processed foods. It's going to be hard to peel back from how addictive that lifestyle is. And it's just going to cause us to eat more. Focusing on whole foods, prioritizing protein for the satiety as well as for the muscle building component. And then your recommendations for resistance training at some cadence, depending on where you're starting in how this is following. Are there things now for those that are listening, because we have people of all different sort of cohorts that are following along, that are like, hey, look, I'm looking for now the optimization category. Are there classifications that you now either have an approach or a recommendation on the rabbit hole that people can go under? So let's start with the first one. Let's talk about like therapeutics, right? Are you a fan of peptides or any additional components that people could be looking at now? Again, when they have a foundation of these basic things with diet, lifestyle, rest and sleep, which is an important part of it too, and recovery. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, peptides are, I just started really working with and learning about peptides over the last year. And they're remarkable at what they can do for the body. We had an expert on our show, Dr. Seeds, who's one of the leading researchers and doctors that work with peptides. And he really illuminated to me on what some of their effects and benefits are. So now there's a lot of peptides that are out there. But some of them have some pretty remarkable pro-health effects, and they're different than drugs. This was a big one for me. When I asked them this, is what's the difference between a peptide and a pharmaceutical? So, well, peptides already exist in the body. So what we're doing is we're using something the body's familiar with, already has control mechanisms and barriers so that it doesn't overdo things. It doesn't downregulate receptors or cause other side effects. We know what the peptide, they're already in your body. So when we give you this peptide, it's a signal your body's used to. And that's why we don't see lots of these negative effects like we would with pharmaceuticals. So I thought that was interesting. The follow-up question was, well, why isn't every pharmaceutical company selling peptides? Well, the answer to that is their compound pharmacies can create them. You can't patent them. So you see right now these GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide, or what's the Ozempic is the brand name, right? That's making lots of waves right now. Yeah, right. You could buy semaglutide from a compounding pharmacy and you're not getting Ozempic, the brand name, but it's the same thing. In fact, they're lobbying the FDA, of course, to stop this because I think they want to protect their profits, but it is an interesting space. But you're right. In comparison to other lifestyle changes, they pale in comparison. But peptides can be pretty interesting, especially as you get older. And if you've done all the other stuff and you want to kind of like take it to the next level. I've now experienced certain peptides, and some of them are pretty remarkable. BPC 157, thymosin beta 4. I'm noticing some very interesting effects from those in terms of inflammation and recovery. But those aren't things that I would, recommend to clients before having them work on their diet or exercise. Here's something that's, it's common. Once I say this compound, you'll know it because everybody knows it, but it's quite clear that this is a pro-longevity, pro-health, pro-wellness supplement, which is creatine. Creatine has, that was originally sold for people who want to build muscle or improve their strength and performance. Creatine is healthy. It's healthy across the board. It's good for everybody. It's very good for mitochondrial health. It's very good for the heart. It's good for the brain. most people should be taking creatine because it's got health benefits across the board. And in fact, the wellness space is starting to now promote it. But I think in the next 10 years, we're going to give it to everybody because it seems to have health benefits across the board. It's also the most studied supplement. There's literally thousands of studies on creatine. It's very safe compound as well. So that's something that I like to.
Do you know enough about creatine to kind of explain to the audience kind of how it works and why it's beneficial?
Yeah. So creatine increases or helps fuel the amount of ATP that your body uses, which is a fundamental, muscle energy, or should I say fundamental form of energy for all mitochondria. So more ATP means the mitochondria operates more effectively and efficiently. We just talked about mitochondria earlier, about its role, mitochondrial dysfunction in cancer. They see mitochondrial dysfunction in almost all chronic kind of health issues. So it's keeping the mitochondria healthy. It also reduces the amount of methyl donors you need for lots of complicated processes in the body. So you'll hear that sometimes like, oh, you need more methyl donors. You should supplement with methyl B vitamins, or if you have this particular gene variant or whatever. Creatine is very effective at that. But if you look at the data on creatine and cognitive function, depression, heart function, liver function, just the entire body. It seems to have this bone health, of course, muscle health across the board. And again, it's got a lot of studies. I mean, it's literally, I think thousands, if I'm not mistaken, of studies have been done on creatine. So it's good stuff.
Any other supplements that you are a fan of in terms of now kind of moving from foundational to bonus and optimization?
Yeah.
Of course, you can go, and we've done so many episodes about the benefits of all sorts of there's an endless list of supplements that are there, omegas and this and that, but specifically in the context of building lean muscle mass, dialing in body composition.
Yeah. Nothing is going to beat filling a nutrient deficiency. Okay. So if you get a nutrient test and you're not in optimal range for vitamin D, which is quite common. A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D or magnesium. It's another common one. Zinc. That's a common one. And you supplement, or B vitamins, especially if you're a vegan, and you fill that nutrient gap, it'll have profound effects on your health. Not because those nutrients are magic, but rather you are operating below, how your body's supposed to operate because you were deficient in this thing. So like vitamin D deficiency, depression, anxiety, low testosterone, skin, bone, hair issues. So you all of a sudden fill that nutrient gap and it's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So nothing's going to beat that. The second thing would be creatine. The third thing, just because of its utility as a protein supplement, because, what I said earlier, if you try this, look, if you listen to what I said and you're like, okay, I'm going to hit my target body weight in protein, you're going to find pretty quickly it's hard. It's not easy. It produces a lot of satiety. Really, really, whole foods that contain protein just fill you up. It's tough to hit those numbers. So a protein powder can be beneficial. And I like to use it to fill the gap. So you hit the end of the day, you look at your protein intake. I'm 30 grams off. Take a 30-gram protein shake, and that'll give you some pretty profound benefits. I don't think you should depend on a protein shake, though. I think it's, like I said, use it as I didn't hit my targets. Now I'm going to take the shake to fill those needs. And that's pretty much it. Other supplements, in special populations will have benefits. Ashwagandha seems to have some benefits for stress management as an adaptogen, but there's some cases where it might not be a good idea. Rhodiola, is another one that might have some benefits. But we're talking about like 1% effect when you're comparing it to, diet, exercise, sleep, and lifestyle.
Any modalities that you're a big fan of when it comes to recovery, besides, of course, making sure that people are eating appropriate amount of protein? I often find, and that was one of the things that I noticed. I used to always feel that, when I go to the gym and I lift hard, I feel like really sore.
Yeah.
And then I work with a great training group out here. I think I mentioned to you last time, for almost a year. It's called Ultimate Performance. They're out of the UK. And just by consistently making sure that I hit my protein goals every day, I was immediately less sore, even though I was much older than when I was, first sort of dabbling a little bit here and there in doing some tiny bit of strength training, even though I was never, consistent about it. So
Yeah.
anything that you're a big fan of on the recovery side?
Well, nothing's going to be good sleep. Now, a lot of people, when I say that, like, oh, I get good sleep. Here's something that most people do that they don't realize is compromising their sleep quality and actually having a pretty big effect on their recovery and also their health. Okay. So I'll paint the picture. Everybody does this, right? They go to bed at the same time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday comes along. Well, I don't have to wake up early on Saturday, so I'm going to go to bed 2 or 3 hours later. Saturday comes along. Well, I don't need to work Sunday. I got to wake up late. I'm going to sleep in. So I'm going to go to bed 2 or 3 hours later than I normally do. Monday comes along. Guess what happens? Jet lag. You literally give yourself jet lag every single week. Look at the studies on the detrimental effects of jet lag. And we literally change our circadian rhythm once a week, every single week. This is why people hate Mondays. Waking up Mondays like, oh, it's so painful. It's because you gave yourself jet lag. You can't make up for that by sleeping in, by the way. There's a little bit of benefit to it, but you can't. Talk to any sleep expert. So just do this. Go to bed and wake up the same time every single day. That will have profound benefits for recovery. Profound. So sleep is up at the top. And there's other things you can do for sleep that I'm sure you've had people on your show talk about. But that one right there, I tell people that and it blows their minds. So like, oh my God, I do that every weekend.
I would love to bring up, Tess, I just texted you an article that I came across recently in psychiatrist.com. If you could bring it up. This is...
Yep, there it is.
Did you see this?
No.
Okay,
no.
So title of this paper, this title of the article, and then we'll click into the paper in a second. Why sleep consistency may be more important than duration. So if you scroll down, it says new paper. Let's go ahead and click on that. According to a new paper. So this was the mind-blowing part that was there. So the title of the paper is Sleep Regularity is a Stronger Predictor of Mortality Risk Than Sleep Duration, a Prospective Cohort Study. So this was done in the UK by a group of individuals that I believe are affiliated with Oxford. And in this subset, they took almost 67,000 people that they had attached watch accelerometers to as part of this study. And they looked at 1 week of data about sleep consistency. And they found that people who had the best sleep consistency and sleep regularity, which was defined as going to sleep around the same time within like an hour every night, and then waking up around the same time. And they had a sleep midpoint, which honestly, I didn't fully understand how they calculated that or what the benefit was, but essentially was going to sleep regularly and waking up at the same time. Those individuals had an all-cause mortality risk decrease. We'll put it on our YouTube page and we'll link to it at the bottom because we're writing an article on it. But it was something crazy. You had like a 68% decrease in all-cause mortality. You had a decrease in cancer. And this was predictive. So even though it was only 1 week of looking at this data from this accelerometer, quite a decent-sized group of people, 67,000 people, it was predictive of who later ended up developing and dying early and who developed cancer and these other things. So not to say that sleep duration isn't important, and that's what the researchers are saying, it's just that sleep consistency, going back to circadian rhythms and all these other aspects, is so crucial if we want to get all the benefits of sleep.
Yeah, when I bring this up, people always trip out over it. But look at the data on swing shift workers. Have you seen that? I mean, the cancer risk, the heart disease risk, I mean, all chronic disease risk with controls goes through the roof with people who don't go to bed when the sun goes down and don't wake up when the sun goes up. We evolved this way. Okay, humans did not evolve unless there was an emergency or famine or something crazy. When it got dark, we're not very good at seeing in the dark. Okay, we're actually food. When you go out, if you go out in nature in the wilderness and the sun is down, you are food. So we went into our caves and we went to sleep. That's what we did, and we woke up when the sun went up. What we do in modern societies, because we can artificially create light and whatever, and we distract ourselves and have entertainment, we literally throw our circadian rhythms off every single week. So think about this. If you're listening right now, think about how terrible it feels Monday morning when you got to wake up at 6 a.m. after sleeping in Saturday and Sunday because you went to bed so late. It feels terrible. It probably takes you till Tuesday or Wednesday to adjust. And then you repeat the cycle again. So literally, it's just such a simple hack. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, no matter what. Now, of course, there's going to be exceptions and stuff like that. But if you do this for the most part, you'll notice a profound impact on your recovery. on your strength, on your performance, just by doing that simple thing right there. You're literally jet lagging yourself every week.
What's your take on alcohol consumption?
Yeah. When it comes to substances like alcohol, there's a trade-off. And the trade-off is this, because you can also get too fanatical with the, is it good for me? Is this perfect? Right? There's also life quality of life. So if I'm meeting up with you and we're good friends, we haven't seen each other for a while, we're both health conscious people, we sit down, we're like, let's have some wine and hang out. There's some health benefits to that wine. Now, it's not physiological benefits. And I know some people make arguments about the resveratrol or antioxidant, whatever. A glass of grape juice will do the same thing, I guess. Physiologically, there's really no benefits. Alcohol's not really good for you, okay? But you and I bonding, connecting, catching up, having a great time, that's got benefits, right? So there's a bit of a trade-off, I think. And I think that's true for lots of things that we do that we wouldn't necessarily put in the category of, healthy, right? Like going on vacation, not working out, indulging in, the foods of the culture that we're around, and, drinking some alcohol with my wife and having a great time. Like, yeah, I'm not working out, I'm not eating perfect, but is that good for me? Of course it is. Of course it is. So there's a life quality aspect as well. There's a term called orthorexia, which describes the extreme case of being unhealthy because you're too healthy. Follow orthorexics. These are people who stress out over every morsel that they put in their mouth. Everything that they do has to be perfect and structured and aligned because it has to be perfectly healthy. And they're not very healthy if you look at them. They have high rates of anxiety and depression and medication, and their mortality isn't super great as well. There was a study that I often quote that showed that having poor relationships was as bad for your health as smoking 10 cigarettes a day, I think it was. So there's a balance there. So, if you're drinking at home by yourself, to numb yourself, probably not a good idea. But if you have the occasional glass of wine or bottle of wine with your friends because you're bonding and having a great time, it's probably okay.
Yeah, there's this whole movement now of like people kind of seeking out natural wines. I don't know if you've, when you've gone back to Italy to visit, or Sicily, which, by the way, Sicily is one of my favorite places.
Oh, good. You've been there.
I've been to a few spots. Ortigia.
Okay. I've never been there. Been to Taormina?
Taormina.
Yeah, yep. Beautiful. Yeah.
I was there just for a wedding earlier this year.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful place. If you've ever gone to like Europe or Italy and you've had like traditional sort of like table wines, right? There's a few things you notice. Number one, they have like less alcohol. That's the first thing. A lot of the wines we've had here, especially the ones that have become more globalized, and you look at the wine industry, it's been sort of manufactured to be higher alcohol wines, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19% sometimes wines that people are picking up in terms of alcohol percentage because they've had to keep up with all the other hard liquors and other things and make inroads into the market. The other thing is that I learned from my friends, no affiliation with them, but they started a company called Dry Farm Wines. Have you seen these guys?
I haven't.
They're up in the Bay Area and they test wines to make sure that they're like mold free because mold is a big issue in barrels. But in the US alone, there's like hundreds of additives that you can put in to wine without disclosing it on the label. Like you can make it taste sweeter. You can put in added sulfates. You can do this, you can do that. It's like almost as processed as ultra processed foods. So this whole natural wine movement, I think, is really good for people going back to probably, if wines are a healthier part and people can enjoy them in a way, it's probably going to be more how like we consume them in the past with people and an environment and not at home by yourself.
Yeah, now you're talking. See, I think, look, I just did a whole spiel about hyperpalatable foods and palatability and whatever. But there's a big difference between, me visiting my aunt, who I haven't seen in a while, who makes this incredible dish, Sicilian dish called pasta al forno, okay? Now, it's not healthy, okay? But when I go there and she prepares it, she takes her time to cook it, and maybe I go there early and I help her out. And then we sit down and enjoy the meal together. That's very different than me grabbing a box of cookies or Doritos or Cheez-Its, okay? Even if the macros are controlled, there's a value there that's a little bit different. So I think when you look at your food and you respect it And it's like, I'm not drinking this to get drunk. I'm drinking this to enjoy it and enjoy our company. Very different. I'm not eating this to just numb myself. And, one of the behaviors that you'll notice, maybe even in yourself, when you eat things in an unhealthy way, okay, is you're not enjoying the bite that's in your mouth. You're thinking about the one that's on the fork or the piece that's in your hand. You ever do that? You eat something and it's like you can't even enjoy this one. You just want to get the next one.
Yeah, like potato chips.
Yes. Versus you and I go to dinner and somebody just makes an incredibly enjoyable meal and we're enjoying it. We're savoring it, right? So, I've had alcohol, like when I was a kid, when we make stupid decisions, not that I don't make them now, but a lot more when I was younger, where we go and the goal is to get drunk. I'm not enjoying this drink. It's like, we're just going to get drunk because, I don't know, maybe I'm anxious and it's a social lubricant. Who knows, right? But versus now, if you and I go and we enjoy, I'm going to enjoy and savor what's in this glass and I'm going to enjoy the conversation. So I think that falls in line with that. Like, I don't think palatable foods are necessarily a bad thing when you respect them, you prepare them, and you enjoy the company that you're with if it brings people together. So now we're talking about the balance around these types of things. And I think you could bring that all the way back to something that I said earlier, okay? If you feed yourself, if you exercise yourself, if your behaviors, if the things that you do center around self-care, then you're probably going to make a lot of balanced decisions. So if you ask me, you invite me to go out to have some pizza and some beer, and I'm in the mode of self-care, I can make a very balanced decision. I can say, ooh, my health hasn't been so good lately. I think I'm going to skip on that, but I'll come hang out with you. Or, yeah, you know what? I've been eating pretty good. I'm pretty healthy. I feel good. I'm going to enjoy some beer and some pizza with you. So I think the decisions you make when they come from that place, what you'll find is you'll start to more naturally find a place of balance. And I think that's the root of the sustainability of a healthy lifestyle. If you don't have that, it's either going to be obsession, body obsession, some kind of dysmorphia, or some kind of orthorexia is really what's going to keep you consistent. And that's not healthy either.
One of the things I really appreciate about your message is that you are the first person to admit that the fitness space and the health and wellness space hasn't done the best job. And in some cases done a bad job of communicating a lot of the basics that are there. And you're trying to right those wrongs, you and your team. And I think you've been doing a great job about that. And that we all have to be protective of the over marketing, over exaggerations, extreme polarizing views of people wanting us to demonize certain macronutrients, certain, food things, saying that, completely stay away from processed foods. And I think that's an important message because really this is about the foundational things that we do, 80 to 90% of the time. And then there's that aspect that's going to be our own life and the contextualization where truly, if it is actually 10, 5% of your life, then great, go ham and have fun and do the things that you want to do. Another area, and the reason I enjoy following you on Twitter is that you are, or X now, is that you're also very vocal about people being protective of their minds of this onslaught of kind of, for lack of a better term, mainstream media trying to demonize the approach of health and fitness. Yeah. You made a hint to this previously, but you were talking about, you can Google some of the articles that are out there, but, fitness and getting fit has its roots in ultra right nationalist or white nationalist. Oh God, another one that was there recently, Tessa, maybe if you can Google this. This is an article that was written and it was ultra right and seed oils, right? That anybody who wants to not overconsume or wants to stay away. There was a Rolling Stone article. Yeah. It was called "Why Is the Right So Obsessed with Seed Oils?" It's by E.J. Dixon. And first of all, it's funny that that's being placed on, the right. I have friends of all different political spectrums who actually have, which is what you're advocating for, a truly balanced and nuanced approach, which is that, great, do we want to be over consuming seed oils? And typically what has a lot of seed oils? It's ultra processed foods.
Yeah, thank you, yes.
Right? And it's okay to want to avoid that. And at the same time too, seed oils and having it once is not going to kill you, overnight. And doesn't have to be this thing that plays into orthorexia. So I'm bringing all these things up because I want to give you an opportunity to sort of talk about, why do you feel like it's important for you as an authority in this space to want to speak up about some of these coordinated attempts of people trying to demonize healthy approaches to living?
I think it's safe to say, and I think most people agree, that everything these days has become politicized. And I never thought that they would come for health and fitness. It didn't make any sense. How is health and fitness political? And yet here they are, somehow politicizing or demonizing something that there isn't a person in this world whose life would not improve if their health improved. Everybody's life would improve. I don't care what you believe in. If you got healthier, more mobile, more functional, your life would improve. Also, I said this earlier, gyms are the most, people like to talk about inclusivity and non-judgmental places. Go to a gym. There is no place on earth more accepting. You go in there as an obese, out of shape, unhealthy person. Go try to exercise. The most support you'll get will be from the fanatics in that space. So I take it very, very personal when they try to attack fitness, because not only is it wrong, it's the opposite of right. All right, so let me paint the picture real quick so people can understand why this is happening, okay? I don't think it's a political party necessarily that's going after one side or the other. Some people can make that argument, but here's what it is. When people are unhealthy, they're very profitable. Go to the grocery store. Take all of the foods and products that we could label as not healthy, and take all the foods and products that are labeled as healthy. Line them up. Which one makes up a bulk of the grocery store? Okay. Your consumption habits when you're unhealthy are very different than when you're healthy. It's easy to sell you a lot of products that are processed and patented when your consumption habits are based off of an unhealthy lifestyle versus healthy. What about medical costs? Pharmaceuticals. Do pharmaceutical companies profit from your being healthy or profit from you being unhealthy? Look at your consumption habits with technology. By the way, when I say healthy, I mean healthy. I don't just mean fit, because there's fit unhealthy people too. I mean healthy, like emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. You're a balanced, healthy person. What are your social media consumption habits? What are your technology consumption habits? What are your consumption habits just in general? Do healthy people have shopping habits that are unhealthy? Not as much as people are unhealthy who may buy things to fill holes or gaps in the way they feel. Look at your consumption habits with entertainment. I mentioned pharmaceuticals. It's in lots of markets' best interests to prevent you from becoming healthier and more fit. It's lots of markets' self-interests to take away the self-empowerment you get from being fit and healthy. When I'm sick now, if I were to get ill tomorrow, I am more vulnerable to manipulation. I don't feel as strong. I don't feel as confident. Okay. You take someone that's chronically unhealthy and you're manipulatable. You're very manipulatable. It's very easy for me to scare you into voting or buying in the way that I want. So when you see stuff like this, realize that they don't want a healthy population. They want an unhealthy population. And that's just a fact. And I don't care what market. You take any market, the makeup market, the moisturizer market, the clothing market, the car market, electronics, social media, medicine, supplements, food. There's more money to make off of you when you are an unhealthy person. And again, in that entirety, than when you're healthy. That's just a fact. So, and that's a sad fact, but that's what we're up against. And I say we, and I mean that as those of us who truly understand what we're up against and who are trying to really help people. I didn't become a trainer to make a lot of money. By the way, that's a terrible way to make a lot of money. One thing I love about trainers and fitness coaches is that they don't do it because they're looking for honor or glory or money. It's a terrible way to do all of those things. Maybe a little bit easier now with social media, but you talk to any trainer and you ask them why they became a trainer. It's like, I just want to help people. I really want to help people. I love what I do. I want to help people out. And that's what I did for years. I just stumbled upon this social media thing, starting a podcast that became very successful. But the reason, the whole goal behind it wasn't even to make a ton of money. It was like, can we reach more people with this message? We don't like the direction of the fitness industry. We were sick and tired. And I say we because I have co-hosts that were also trainers. We were sick and tired of having to constantly battle this with our clients. Like, can we put this message out and reach more people? So that's when you see stuff like that. Like, fitness is fat shaming. That's another one. That's crazy. Fat shaming. That's terrible. Now, yeah, sure, some people will shame themselves into fitness, but one message you'll hear me communicate time and time again is don't work out because you hate yourself. It's a terrible way to achieve any kind of success. Do it because you care about yourself. Fitness is self-care. So I take it very personal when I see these crazy messages. By the way, people's voting habits do, and we have strong evidence to suggest that they do tend to change when people become more fit and healthy. So that may also be why you see some of this stuff. So
some people are convinced that the reason that they can't lose fat, especially in their midsection, their belly fat, is because they're eating too much sugar and too much carbohydrates. What's the truth on this? Give us your opinion.
There's a lot of correlations that people then try to make the cause or the causation. So what they do is you'll look at a big study and you'll say, people are consuming more carbohydrates than ever. This must be the reason why we have obesity. Or our fat intake is increased. This must be the reason why we're obese. Or I'll use a great example. Look at sodium and its connection to chronic disease. It must be, we got to cut sodium now. What they're really looking at, and this is really interesting, it's actually quite simple. The 3 ingredients, you talk to any chef or anybody who is a food scientist, ask them, what are the 3 main components of palatability? And what will they say? Salt, sugar, fat. Okay. Now, there's lots of chemicals and things they can use now, and food scientists are it's remarkable if you ever talk to a food scientist, the science that goes into making foods palatable. But those are the 3 main ingredients, okay? So what you're seeing is a correlation. People are consuming more food, period, end of story. And the people that consume the most are consuming more palatable foods, which always are typically high in salt, sugar, or fat. The truth is that excess calories are what make us gain weight. Now, that's an oversimplification because I know this, I coached and trained people for decades, okay? It's definitely an oversimplification. But the truth is, if you don't eat more calories than you burn, there is no way for your body to build fat. It doesn't have the energy to do so. Unless you could capture energy out of the cosmos, in which case you should go and get studied by physicists because that would break all the rules of thermodynamics. It's just not how it works. So let's look at the connection between carbohydrates or fats or what's happening with us. Really what you want to look at is the most important thing is, how can I eat a diet that encourages me to not overeat? Or to put it differently, what kind of diet makes it hard for me? What kind of diet makes me want to overeat? And the truth across the board with this, because there are individual variances, you have different food preferences than I do, but across the board, heavily processed foods will do this. And I might have brought this up on the last interview we did, but the studies on those are some of my favorites because diet studies are notoriously unreliable. They're typically survey-based. So it's like, how many tomatoes did you eat in the last 3 weeks? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to guess, right? Or how many calories do you think you're eating? Or let's try and figure this out. The studies on heavily processed foods are very controlled. They actually take people, put them in a lab, watch what they eat, provide them with unlimited heavily processed foods, or they'll take this group and provide them with unlimited whole foods. They'll even control the macros. Similar macro breakdown, proteins, fats, and carbs. And they'll take the groups and switch rooms. So it's really well made. And every study done on this has shown that on average, people will consume 600 more calories a day when they eat the heavily processed foods. And that's just because they're irresistible. They've been designed to be irresistible. And so overeating is really baked into it. So if you avoid those foods, you're most likely, and it's more complex than this because we do eat for reasons other than cravings and hunger, right? There's emotional eating and I'm bored and anxious and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, if you avoid those foods, you're going to eat less, just naturally. You're not even going to have to try. Your body will just tell you, I'm satisfied, and you'll eat less. Now, if we break down macro breakdowns even further, because there's a lot of nuance here, but there's another thing that seems to be true for the most part, okay, across the board. And I say most part because there are cases where this isn't true. But for the most part, a high protein diet also is quite effective at controlling hunger. Protein is extremely satiety producing. Okay, if you take two diets, identical, one is high protein, one is low protein, the high protein diet, people feel way more satiety than the low protein diet. But there's a little more to that as well. High protein diet contributes to muscle gain more effectively. And there seems to be, and I'm careful when I say this because metabolism is incredibly complex. Human or mammalian metabolism is the only thing more complex than it that we've identified as the human brain. Okay. But protein seems to also have a thermogenic effect. So when we look at studies where the calories are identical, high protein versus low protein, we see more muscle, less fat in the high protein diet than in the low protein diet, even though the calories are the same. So protein's interesting in that sense. And it seems to be true for the most part. And I say the most part because there are some cases where people will try to hit a high protein intake and it just doesn't feel well. Their digestion may be off, in which case I'd say, listen to your body. Now, when we get to carbs and fats, this is where the nuance really starts to kick in, okay? There is an essential amount of fat that you want to consume. Fat is an essential macronutrient, meaning you have to consume enough to meet your needs. If you go below that, then you're just going to fail to thrive. You won't be healthy, period, end of story. So once you hit that minimum, then you can play with your carbohydrate and fat intake and really base it on how you feel. What makes my digestion feel the best? What gives me the most or the best energy? What seems to affect my mood the best? What are the foods I enjoy to eat the most? And then you see this wide variety. Like I do much better on a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet. I just tend to feel sharper and better. Now, if I know I'm going to go do a high performance workout, let's say I'm going to work out with my friends and, I want to show off a little bit. We're going to see who's stronger or whatever. I'll bump the carbs up because there's a performance benefit to it. But for the most part, doing stuff like this and living my regular life, I'd rather be sharp mentally, and a higher fat diet tends to do that for me. There's people where it's the opposite. When their carbohydrates get a little low, they feel foggy. They don't feel good. They get moody, in which case they can bump their carbohydrates. Now, of course, this is in the context of the calories being the same. So that's what I tell people. You got to listen to your body. Now, there are morphologies where, we can break it down even further. Fatty acid content. Some people seem to get blood lipid levels that don't look so good when their saturated fat intake, let's say, is too high, and they seem to do better when they trade those for other types of fats. Other people are not affected. I'm one of those people. I eat a lot of red meat. I eat a lot of eggs. And my lipid profile is always incredible. I have had clients though where we've had to switch that around a little bit. Nonetheless, I will say this: the potential negative effects that we've identified from a diet that's higher in sugar or higher in some of those fats that I mentioned, like saturated fats, a lot of that seems to get erased when your calories are not that high. In fact, there's been people who've tried to prove this point, and I don't necessarily like these examples because I think it oversimplifies things. But you'll see people who go, I'm just going to eat McDonald's and I'm going to show everybody that I'm going to improve my blood markers. And what they do is eat a low calorie McDonald's diet, and they do show improvements. I don't like those examples because try to eat McDonald's and eat low calorie all the time. Good luck. You're going to find yourself craving more and more food because that's designed to make you overeat. But that's pretty much it. So if I had to say rule number one, eat only whole foods or eat as much of your diet in whole foods as possible. Number two, try to hit your target body weight in grams of protein. And then the rest is up to your personal preference, and you're going to be okay. That's like 90% of it.
It's wild because even though we all may not want to live that lifestyle or pursue that, we can still learn different lessons from different populations, or at least possible lessons. And then when you combine that with some of the other data that's out there, all of a sudden there's a combination of things that we can do to not only protect ourselves against cancer, which exercise seems to be a huge part of that. But we can also dial in our body composition. We can also support our longevity without all the excess strain that comes from training incredibly, incredibly difficultly, and also taking steroids and other stuff, which none of us really want to do.
No. And, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she's been talking a lot about this, about the obesity epidemic. And she says that being over fat isn't the problem. The problem is being under muscled. I agree with her 100%. I think body fat, we call it the obesity epidemic, but I think what we're looking at is the smoke. I think we're not looking at the fire, like what's causing this problem. And it is, I agree with her, it is being under muscled, not having metabolically active tissue like muscle to offset the lifestyle that we live. And we see this again in the data. It's so protective, especially, and the reason why I preach strength training so much isn't because other forms of exercise aren't beneficial. Done appropriately and properly, all forms of activity are very, very healthy. So I don't want to discourage anyone from doing things that they love. Like if they listen to me and say, well, he says strength training, but I love, running every day and it feels good. It's like, no, don't stop that. It's all good for you. Strength training, I think, is unique in the sense that it directly combats the effects of modern life, which is sedentary, yet busy, also surrounded by hyperpalatable food. So we're just eating a lot. You also don't need to do a lot of it to get the benefits from it. So if the average person strength trained and they did it effectively, that doesn't mean hard, that means effective. Okay. So there's a right dose. If you do it right, 2 days a week, you will get significant health effects. You can't say that about other forms of exercise. Like if you took the average person and you just had them walk an equal amount of time that we would do with the strength training. So let's say 45 minutes twice a week, which I would be able to do with most people. If they just walked twice a week, 45 minutes, they would see some improvements, but they wouldn't get the same bang for the buck that they would get from strength training. And that's less about the activity portion of the exercise and more to do about the protective effects of the muscle itself. Because once you build it, it's on you. So like I'm sitting here right now, I'm not active, just my mouth is moving basically, but the muscle that I carry has a very protective effects. And so it's a nice buffer. And that's why I preach strength training so much to the average person. I'm not telling everybody to become a bodybuilder. And even if you wanted to be one, good luck. It's a very, very tough thing to do. Really what I'm saying is, look, you're probably going to work out a couple days a week anyway, because most of us are not fitness fanatics. If you live the life that most of us do in modern societies, this is going to give you more for the time spent than any other form of exercise. And that's just because it builds the muscle.
So here's something mind-blowing that I learned from you that I'd love for you to break down. Bodybuilders, meaning those people who actually have more muscle mass than the typical person in the population, actually have a lower risk of cancer. Mm-hmm. What's going on there that this would be the case?
Yeah, so let me paint the picture more clearly, because it blew my mind when I saw some of this data. And here's why it blew my mind. When we're talking about bodybuilders, competitive bodybuilders, this is a subset of the population where they take it to the extreme. So, for example, exercise is healthy, okay? But if you go too far with it, if your pursuit is extreme performance, you start to trade longevity for performance. So like if you look at like high-level athletes, football players, basketball players, track athletes, long-distance runners, you'll find that their longevity isn't that great because they've surpassed the point of longevity and now they're pursuing maximum performance. Those extremes, there's always a trade-off, okay? And bodybuilders are as extreme as it gets when it comes to muscle building. So muscle building, very healthy. Average person, go build muscle. Very good for you. You want to compete in bodybuilding? Well, now that's like everything you do. You're feeding your body excessively. You're taking anabolic steroids and other hormones. You're dieting for shows in extreme ways, oftentimes taking drugs that help you burn body fat, things that are not approved to do so. Bodybuilders live anything but a healthy lifestyle, okay? So when I saw the data on the fact that they had lower cancer rates than the average person, I was blown away because I expected them to have worse health across the board. Now, it's true, They have higher rates of heart issues and other organ issues, probably result of the drug use that they do. But the fact that they're taking things like growth hormone, testosterone in really high super physiological doses, that they beat their bodies up, that they diet the way they do. And when I say diet, what I mean is not your traditional, oh, I'm going to get fit. Like they'll get down to 2% body fat, dehydrate their bodies. When they're on stage, they're literally walking zombies. And yet their cancer rates were significantly lower. And what that did is it pointed to the incredibly protective effects or anti-cancer effects of building muscle. Mm-hmm. So although they live a very unhealthy life in pursuit of this extreme sport, if you will, they still have lower cancer rates. And what that highlights is just how protective muscle is in the context of cancer. And that's probably to do with the mitochondrial health that muscle presents. The glycogen storing effects, right? The muscle's ability to store or to react to sugar in the blood, but really mitochondria. And if you look at, and I'm not an expert on cancer, I think it's a very complicated topic, even if you talk to experts on the subject, but they will say that mitochondrial dysfunction lies somewhere at the root of what's happening with cancers across the board. Now, this is important because years ago, I trained lots of doctors and I did have some cancer specialists. And years ago, I had a family member who was fighting cancer. So I became very, very enthralled with the topic of the subject. This was someone I cared about. And I remember, I talked to my friend who was a cancer specialist, and I asked him about cancers, and he said, they're all very different. They're all very different. Colon cancer is very different from breast cancer. We call them cancer, but how you treat one may not work with how you treat another one. I remember specifically, I brought up the Warburg effect, and I said, oh, why don't we just take out carbohydrates? Can't we just put people on ketogenic diets? And he says, well, some cases that works. He goes, you do realize in some cases, cancers feed off of ketones. And I'm like, what? And that's when he told me about the differences between them. So to find something that seems to be common with all of them is very interesting. And that's mitochondrial dysfunction. It seems to be at the root of most of them. And we know that building muscle, the process of building muscle, really improves how mitochondria utilize energy, how healthy they stay, and and the effects it has on your cells. And building muscle is a great way to do this. So when you look at these bodybuilders who, and I know the space very well, I never competed or anything like that, but I have friends who are bodybuilders. I know the space very well. I worked in gyms. They're not healthy. They don't live a healthy lifestyle. And yet they have lower cancer rates. It's really crazy.
Before we hit record, I was showing you a tweet from Dr. Sachin Panda, who's a friend. He's been on this podcast before. He's known for his deep work in sort of circadian rhythm science. Yeah. And for those that are watching on YouTube, the tweet over here is he links to an abstract review in the journal Cancer Biology. I think it's called Seminars, Cancer Biology. And even 30 minutes a day on the topic of cancer, 30 minutes a day, and this doesn't include strength training. They didn't do just strength training. They were looking at all exercise. Just even 30 minutes a day is a super protective effect against reducing your total overall risk of all cancers that are out there, which is like massive. And I would guess that if you did strength training and you focused on just that alone, it would go back probably. We don't know. I don't think a study has been done on that. Besides the bodybuilders?
They've actually compared the anti-cancer effects of different forms of exercise, and strength training is at the top.
So it's superior. We know that.
It is. All forms of exercise have an anti-cancer effect, but strength training is the best one. Now, of course, in an ideal world, and I want to be very clear, in an ideal world, if you're watching this and you're like, okay, I have time, I'm going to make time. You want to be active every day. You want to include some form of activity every day, throughout the day. You want to pepper it throughout the day. It's probably the best way to do it. And you want to do some strength training. But if you're only going to pick one and you know yourself, and you're like, I'm not going to work out every day, it's not going to happen, then the strength training will give you the best protective effect. But you know what's interesting about this? What studies like this remind me of are the studies on things like on nutrients, like vitamin D. People who took vitamin D had far less, bone fracture rates or, better immune systems. It's not that the vitamin D was magical. It was that most people or many people are deficient. So when we see stuff like this, it's not that exercise is this magical thing. It's that we're so inactive. We're so inactive that a lot of our diseases are the result of our inactivity. And so what you're seeing here is the effect of, this is what you're supposed to do, probably more than this. So it's not that the exercise itself is this magic medicine. It's that if you don't do it, it's so bad for you that you see these higher rates of cancer.
When it comes to the concept of losing weight and belly fat, instead of focusing on calories first with your clients, you actually focus on building muscle.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. So there's two reasons for that. Now, let's little context. So I trained everyday people as a personal trainer for over 2 decades. And I had a deep passion, I still do, for helping people. And so through that process, I mean, you're talking about 20 years, through that process, you start to kind of learn what works and what doesn't work. Now, there's what works in textbooks and in studies, and then there's what works in the real world. And what I mean by works isn't necessarily just, do they lose weight, but rather, are they able to keep it off and keep it off forever? Am I able to create a sustainable approach for this person and help them develop a relationship with exercise and nutrition that lasts forever? Because a lot of people don't know this, but the fail rate with weight loss is close to 90%. So we don't have a problem losing weight. We have a problem keeping it off. Everybody's focused on how do I lose it? Nobody's looking at the big problem, which is, okay, once I lose it, then what happens? And what's going on? Why can't we keep it off? And a lot of it has to do with how we lose the weight, the approach that we have. So the first reason, it's going to sound kind of silly, but the first reason why I would focus on, I guess, the fitness aspect or building muscle in particular was it was easier. It's easier for me to help you build muscle if you're seeing me 2 days a week as a trainer than it is for me to get you to alter and change your nutrition that you're going to deal with every single day, when I'm there, when I'm not there, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when you're at a party or whatever. So that's number one. Number one, let's start with the things that I know as a trainer or a coach I have a little more control over, and things that actually require less from you to get the ball rolling. So that's number one. But then here's number two. If I can get your body to build muscle, we could start to move your body in a more advantageous position from a few different standpoints. One, you become more, it becomes more metabolically advantageous, okay? Muscle burns calories. And if I can get your body to burn more calories, later on, it's gonna be easier to sustain because you can eat more and maintain a leaner body. Speed up your metabolism, if you will. I know there's a lot of debate and discussion about how much you can speed up your metabolism. And we have studies that show that a pound of muscle only burns, let's say, X amount of calories. And some people argue it's more than that. I think it's far more complex than people realize. Yes, muscle by itself burns more calories, but there is a flexibility, a metabolic flexibility that exists within our bodies with the current lean body mass that we have. Okay, so you can take somebody, have them gain no muscle or lose no muscle, maintain the same lean body mass, but through other methods, through sleep, changes in hormones, behaviors, what kind of signals you're sending your body. Do you want it to build muscle? Do you want it to conserve calories? You can burn more or less calories. And then on top of that, you have just the fact that more muscle burns more calories because it's so metabolically active in comparison to other tissues of the body. Like body fat's very easy to maintain. Muscle, much more expensive from a caloric standpoint. So when I get the person to start building muscle, I'm starting to also speed up their metabolism. In that process, as we start to talk about nutrition, the goal is not to take things away, but rather to add things to start to fuel or support, I should say, that new strength and that new muscle. Also, there's a behavioral component to that with the nutrition component, which is, behaviorally speaking, people tend to be better, or it tends to be more successful telling someone to add something to their diet than it is to tell them to take away. Now, I know people who understand calories probably listening and saying that makes no sense. You want someone to lose weight, you're telling them to eat more. And I'm going to say yes, but it's a bit of a sneaky approach. So to give you an example, I would tell somebody, we're not going to cut your calories, but what I want you to do is I want you to eat 30 grams of protein with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I want you to eat that first, and then eat whatever else you want afterwards. Now, I know as a trainer, and I'm sure you know this as well, and we know this now, the literature is pretty clear, that protein is extremely satiety producing. It fills you up. It makes you not want to eat anymore. It also tends to regulate blood sugar, and blood sugar fluctuations tend to cause behavioral changes that tend to make us want to either overeat or eat things that tend to be hyperpalatable, which then contribute to overeating. So I would tell them to aim for 30 grams of protein and eat that first. And without them realizing it, they would end up eating less calories overall. Plus, they get the protein that they need to fuel that muscle growth. There's also a confidence that comes from seeing objective progress in the gym, where yesterday you could do 2 push-ups and today now you could do 3 or 4. I would make sure to paint the picture for the client or point this out. And I would say things like, last week you were able to, lift 50 pounds and this week you were able to lift 60 pounds. Do you know what that means? And they would say, well, I'm stronger. I said, yes, but fundamentally it means you're a different person. You're not the same person you were last week. That's very powerful for somebody who's trying to change themselves in fundamental ways. And then there's the hormonal component that comes from the process of building muscle. And we can get into the weeds with this, but the one that I like to focus on has most to do with insulin sensitivity. Muscle is very insulin sensitive. In fact, there's studies that they've done with obese individuals where they have them lose no weight. They simply have them gain some muscle, and we see significant improvements in insulin sensitivity. Muscle is a place where we store glycogen, right? We could store those carbohydrates and sugars that we eat. It's also insulin sensitive because insulin has an anabolic effect to it. So when you build some muscle, you become more insulin sensitive. Becoming more insulin sensitive means you're going to have less of those ups and downs. And we know those ups and downs affect how we feel. And a big thing that we don't focus on when we talk about nutrition, that I learned a lot as a trainer, was how food makes you feel is paramount. Because I could tell you what to eat all day long. I could give you the perfect amount of calories, grams of proteins, fats, carbohydrates. I could tell you all those things. But if you have a relationship with food where if you feel irritable, tired, depressed, sad, whatever, you reach for something to comfort yourself. Well, if I can get you to feel a little bit better, you're more likely to make decisions, conscious decisions, eventually become unconscious, so you can develop patterns. But initially, you're more likely to develop or to make choices that are better for you. And so this was the beginning of the process, So you come hire me, I want to lose 30 pounds, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to do that. But first, let's focus on getting you strong. And then from there, we'll see what happens. And it was a far more successful approach.
So many powerful takeaways in that. I'd love to tease a few of those things out. But first, I want to start off with this, is that some people might be looking at you if they're watching on YouTube. They might be thinking, okay, great, this guy's training other guys. But you told me while we were chatting initially that actually most of your clients initially to start were women.
Yes, vast majority.
This is something that is not just for men, but this is something that you've had proven experience with women as well.
Yeah, no, I would say over the two and a half decades of training people and managing gyms, probably 70 to 80% of my clients were female. I didn't train in bodybuilder gyms. I had some athletes that I worked with, but the vast majority of people I trained were everyday people. So these were big Globo gyms that I managed and ran. These were people who had families and kids, and they worked and they want to lose weight and feel better, and they hired me and I worked with them. So that's the vast majority of my experience. What's interesting about the comment that you made, which I want to touch on, and this is it's very common. We've done a massive, and I say we, the fitness industry, has done a massive, massive disservice to women. We have painted one of the most effective and powerful and just easiest to sustain forms of exercise as a form of exercise for men who want to build big muscles. This is what bodybuilders do. This is what athletes do. All you other people want to be fit, healthy, and just lose weight. Don't pay attention to this. That other stuff is for those extreme, meatheads, for example. And that's terrible because, men and women have both been lied to by the fitness industry, but women far more so. I mean, I remember the first gym that I became a trainer of at the age of 18. I walked in there. This was a 24-hour fitness in San Jose. and it was one of their flagship clubs. And I remember walking in there, getting hired, and there was a women's only area within the gym. They used to do this in gyms back in the 80s and 90s, right? And I walked into the women's area for the first time because now I'm a trainer, so I can go throughout the whole gym. And the equipment in there was identical to the equipment that was out into the general floor. The difference was the upholstery was pink, and the dumbbells were covered in like some, pink or purple rubber. And I remember thinking, even this as an 18-year-old trainer, how condescending that we're telling women this is where they need to work out, and all we did was color it pink. And I remember the information that was communicated, you still hear this a lot to women, was, don't lift weights like this because you'll get big and bulky and masculine. What you should do is grab those 2-pound dumbbells, do 5,000 reps, feel the burn. This is going to develop, sculpted, toned, long, lean looking muscles. By the way, I love saying this. This always gets people if they haven't heard this before. Toned, the way that the fitness industry uses it, is a completely invented, made up marketing term. Now, toned exists as a word. It just means a muscle's ability to contract, but tone, the way we use it, is like, it's different than building somehow. Like toning means you don't have big muscles. They're just nice and firm. Muscles build or they shrink. They don't tone. Toning is just building to a smaller degree. So really what we're telling women to do is build muscle, but we just repackaged it in a way that was easier to sell. And then we changed workouts so that they weren't. But no, the majority of my clients were women. I loved, shattering their paradigms around exercise and how to approach it. And I became very successful in doing so, in creating behaviors and routines for people that they were able to maintain. And my favorite comment that I would get from people, I love hearing this, and it became quite common after, was they would come to me and say, Sal, I'm getting leaner, but I don't feel like I'm working that hard. Like, this is really weird. Like, what's happening? How is my body working this way? And I tell them, I say, the difference is what you did before, or what you were doing before, is you were fighting against your body. And every time your body would send you a signal that what you were doing wasn't working so well, you just pushed it harder. What we're doing is we're working with your body's natural abilities to adapt. We understand how they work. We work with them so that the time you do spend in here is effective and efficient, and we're getting your metabolism and your hormones to work in a way to where you don't have to kill yourself every day in the gym. You don't have to starve yourself every day to try to be fit and healthy. This is something that's sustainable. So again, one of my favorite things to hear from people is that quote right there.
That's incredible. Some of what I'm really hearing from you, and having kind of gone deep into your content over the last month as I've been anticipating this interview, is that both for men and women, but in particular, I had shared with you that my audience skews female, that if you are really serious about wanting to lose a little bit of weight, and that obviously fits into the conversation of body composition.
Yes.
Because anybody could lose weight just by not eating for a short period of time, or just way too much fasting, which is not good for you. But if you're serious about body composition, which the fat loss being a part of that and building muscle, if you're not strength training in some capacity, and we'll go through that. I'd love to hear, like, if somebody's just started, okay, if they have a little bit of experience, what's the best approach to that? We'll get to that in a second. You're really doing yourself a disservice, because your only levers that you're pulling are, the diet side of things, and maybe a little bit of stress if people are paying attention to that as well, right? You're doing yourself a disservice because you're not taking advantage of the fact that muscle does all these things that you talked about before. Yeah.
So let's talk about weight for a second, because people are so focused on the scale, especially women, because we've looked at that number, and that number to us means something. I used to love telling people this. It's, I want to lose weight. And I'd say, okay, what kind of weight? And they'd look at me like, what are you talking about? So, well, we could cut your leg off and you'd lose weight, but that's obviously not the weight that you want to lose. Now, of course, that's an extreme example, but body composition is what matters. If you took a 150-pound woman at 35% body fat, let's say 5'4", and you took another woman who was 5'4", 150 pounds, but her body fat percentage would say 20%, same body weight, they would look vastly different. They wouldn't even look the same. In fact, most people would guess that the 20-something% body fat female weighed a lot less. This is because muscle takes up less space than body fat on a pound for pound basis. It's something like if you were to lose 10 pounds of body fat now and gain 10 pounds of 10 pounds of muscle. So replace 10 pounds of body fat with 10 pounds of muscle, you would lose roughly a quarter of the size of your body. Okay. So you weigh the same, but you're a lot smaller. But there's more to it than just that. That muscle obviously makes you more mobile. So that's great. You're stronger, more functional, feels different on the body, looks very different on the body. It improves your hormone profile. So it balances out things like estrogen and progesterone, growth hormone, helps modulate cortisol. So it's more appropriate. It helps regulate testosterone, which is also important in women, not just in men. By the way, testosterone in women, same functions that you find in men. It helps with motivation. It helps with, feeling drive, libido, energy, those types of things. So that muscle does a lot of things, but you weigh the same, right? You weigh the same. I used to have this trainer that worked for me, this female trainer that I used to use. And we used to laugh about this. She was like one of my favorite sales tools because I would get a potential member of the gym that I'd give a tour to. And let's say it was a woman, and we would talk about the gym. And sometimes they'd say, "Oh, I'm not interested in the weights at all. I just want the machine, the cardio and the aerobics classes." And we talk all about strength training, and I'd explain to them, and they'd still be like, no, I'm not interested. And then I would do this challenge. I'd say, okay, I'm going to call in one of my trainers, and if you could guess her body weight within 10 pounds, I'll give you a free membership for the next 3 months. And they would say, I'll take that challenge. And I'd page this trainer, and then she would walk in, and she was like 5'2", very sculpted, very fit. And I'd say, guess her body weight. And they would all guess like 100 pounds, 110 pounds. Then I'd have her stand on the scale, and I forgot how much she weighs, like 135 pounds. It always blow their mind. And I'd say, muscle and body fat look very, very different. So the scale just tells you total body mass. It doesn't tell you, what it's made up of. So I want to explain that, because as we talk about muscle, I know people who are trying to lose weight, when they hear more muscle, to them, they just feel like, I'm going to get bigger.
Okay, I'm going to be a bigger version of me, just with more muscle.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work that way. Now let's talk about the weight loss approach. The weight loss approach, if you look at it from its absolute most basic viewpoint, it's a calories in versus calories out equation. Now, it's obviously far more complex than this. Okay. The human metabolism, or mammalian metabolism, is extremely complex, and calories in versus calories out is like telling somebody who is in poverty, just make more money and save more money, right? It's like way more complex than just that, but that part's still true. So the calories in versus calories out, that is true. What it makes up of, or what contributes to it, is very complex. But let's talk about calories in versus calories out. We understood that equation for a long time. And so we said, okay, we're dealing with an obesity epidemic. People want to lose weight. We need to reduce their calories, and we need to have them burn more calories. So the calorie reduction part, let's have them eat less. Okay, that's what they said with diet. And we can get into that, but there's far more effective and less effective ways of doing that. But then they looked at the calories outside of the equation. And what they said was, okay, movement burns calories. So let's look at all the forms of exercise, and the most valuable ones would be the ones that burn the most calories. And that's what we're going to tell people to do. And it sounds like it makes sense, right? Like, okay, if I'm trying to lose weight, trying to burn more calories, I should just pick the form of exercise that burns the most calories. The problem with that is it completely negates a very important factor with exercise, which is exercise gets your body to adapt. And those adaptations mean a lot. They mean a lot, okay? So if I pick a form of exercise that just gets me to burn a lot of calories, let's say running, that's phenomenal. Now I'm burning a lot of calories, except my body's adaptation process is going to say this: we need more endurance, we need more stamina, we need to conserve more calories. We got to be able to do this activity well and more efficiently. That's what your body is trying to do with that form of exercise. So you build stamina and endurance. You don't need much muscle at all for stamina and endurance. In fact, you need very little muscle for that. So what your body does to become more efficient or slow down its metabolism, lower its calorie requirements, is it actually starts to pare muscle down, especially when you combine it with low calories. And the studies are very clear on this. You diet and you run a lot, or you diet and you do tons of, let's say, calorie burning activity, you see weight loss, but a significant portion of that weight loss is muscle. Now, there's a misconception that you're burning the muscle for energy. That's not what's happening. Your body doesn't like to burn muscle for energy, except in extreme situations. What it's doing is it's just paring it down. It's becoming more efficient. This is why, and by the way, almost everybody who's ever tried to lose weight has probably tried that approach. They've experienced the following: that initial 10-pound weight loss and then hard plateau. What happened? I'm doing 3 days or 4 days a week of this activity. I'm eating this low calorie diet. Why did I plateau? What happened? Well, what happened was your body adapted and learned how to perform and operate on the lower calories and on the calories that you're burning with that activity. And it's very, very intelligent on how it adapts to that. Okay. There was this incredible study that was done. They actually went and studied a modern hunter-gatherer tribe, the Hadza tribe. I'm sure you're familiar with it because people talk about it all the time. And scientists went down and studied them, and through some sophisticated testing, were able to figure out how many calories they burned on a regular basis. Now, remember, these are hunter-gatherers, okay? So they don't have TVs and iPhones, and they got to go hunt their food. They have to gather. They have to get water. They're far more active than the average Westerner. What they found at the end of the study was that they burned roughly the same amount of calories that the average Western couch potato burns. And you think, well, how's that possible? Well, that's how we evolved. If humans burned 6,000 or 7,000 calories a day as hunter-gatherers, we wouldn't be here. It is very hard to find calories in nature until we learned agriculture, and we live in modern. Now it's easy. Calories are really easy to find. But if you go out in the wilderness and you got to hunt for your food and gather your food, you're not going to find 6,000 calories a day. Their body's adapted. So that's essentially what we're doing when we apply the wrong strategy to try to lose weight. Our bodies quickly adapt and nothing happens. And then what we do is we try to do more of the same. Well, I guess I need to do more exercise. I guess I need to cut my calories even more. Then you lose another 7 pounds and you plateau again. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how unsustainable this is. Well, what do I end up at the end of this journey? I lost 30 pounds, but I'm eating 1,100 calories a day, and 5 days a week, I'm on the treadmill for an hour. Most people don't want to do that forever. Or if they stop for a month, everything comes back on.
It's miserable.
Miserable. So what we should do with our approach with exercise is this. What form of exercise, forget the calorie burn while I'm doing the exercise, because that's inconsequential anyway. What kind of exercise is going to do the opposite? Like, what form of exercise is going to teach my body or encourage my body to adapt in a way where it becomes less efficient with calories, where it wants to burn more calories on its own, where I don't have to constantly move to try to make this happen? Well, that's strength training. Nothing does it like strength training. The process of building muscle and having the extra muscle itself. By the way, it's not just the muscle. It's also the signal to build more muscle, both of which teach my body to burn more calories. And I would see this all the time with clients. I'd have a client who would lose 30 pounds and at the end of their weight loss journey was eating more than they did when they started. And here's the other side of strength training that's phenomenal. You don't need to do a lot of it. With strength training, the primary benefit is the adaptation, not the calorie burn. And for most people, that looks like a couple days a week, Now, if you want to move into advanced strength training and really push yourself and compete in strength sports and all that stuff, well, then you're going to need more than that. But for the average person, you can get really far with what I'm talking about with like 2 days a week of appropriate strength training. So now I lost 30 pounds. I'm in the gym 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, and I'm eating more than I did before. That is a sustainable approach. That's the approach that I try to communicate on my podcast, and that's the one I learned with my clients.
I've heard you say that a lot of your clients would come in and initially their focus and their motivation is like, hey, I want to look better. It was focused on the sort of look thing. And then through following your methodology and having this approach of sustained strength training done in a way that doesn't make you feel burnt out. We're going to talk about that in a second. Doesn't make you feel miserable. Actually might give you more flexibility in terms of what you can eat, because your muscle also might be allowing you to have a little bit more flexibility in your diet. We'll get back to that in a second. And all the other components that come in, they ended up at a place with, sure, they might have come in to look a little better, and they ultimately ended up looking better because of that shift in body composition. But what had them stick to this and make it sustained is actually this approach made them feel better.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. You know, the fitness space, social media now, but when I was a kid, it was magazines that we would read. It glorifies workouts like they're battles, like you're going to war and you're beating yourself up and you're crawling out of the gym. And by the way, if you don't do that, well, then your workout wasn't effective. We have to reframe what exercise really is. Now, is there value in beating the crap out of yourself in the gym? Maybe, sometimes. I mean, I think mental fortitude is important. We probably need more of that nowadays. But that's not what makes a workout effective at all. Exercise is simply a signal that tells your body to adapt in a particular way. So let's use another form of adaptation as an example. Let's think of our body, our skin's ability to tan or darken when exposed to the sun. Would it be advantageous to get a tan by going outside and sunburning yourself every day? So if I go out, I need to go out there and burn really bad. That's how I'm going to get a suntan. No, of course not. If I did that, not only would I not get a tan, I would cause lots of damage. It would be miserable experience, and I probably wouldn't want to do it anymore. Well, for some reason, we approach exercise this way. You're going to come into the gym, you've never worked out, or maybe you have a little bit of experience, and you're going to crawl out of the gym, or you're going to be so sore that you can't move for a few days, and yay, that was a great workout. No, all you've done is created a lot of damage, and you've completely overcome your body's ability to adapt. Recovery and adaptation, by the way, are not the same thing. They're somewhat related, but they're not the same thing. We talk a little bit about recovery, and that's important. But there's also our body's ability to overcompensate, become better at then withstanding the same stress next time. Okay, so let me explain what I'm talking about. Recovery is healing. Adaptation is changing. It's overcompensating. I scratch my skin, I cause a little bit of a abrasion, my skin heals over. That's recovery. Adaptation, I develop a little bit of a callus. Okay. You can overcome your body's ability to adapt by just getting your body to want to heal. Okay. Beat yourself up at the gym. You get sore. Soreness kind of goes away. I go back to the gym and beat myself up again. No room for adaptation. I'm literally on a hamster wheel. Recovery, damage, no adaptation. Okay. Some people take it even further and go beyond recovery. What we're looking for is the perfect amount of stress on my body to allow for the adaptation process to occur. Now, the question is, what is that perfect amount of stress? Well, boy, that's different for everybody, okay? If you don't exercise now, it doesn't take much at all to send the signal and to get your body to adapt. Not at all. If you sit on your couch all day long, I could have you do 10 squats, which you never do. And those 10 squats will send a signal to get your body stronger, and you will adapt and you'll get stronger. And as you get stronger, the stress begins to change. The stress starts to change. This process is a slow process, but it should feel good. It should not feel like you're surviving your workouts. You know, the other part of that is we people tend to approach exercise or diet from this place of self-hate, right? Like they get motivated to start working out because they saw a picture of themselves, or they felt like they weren't attractive or inadequate. I'm fat, I'm too skinny, I'm unattractive. So the beating myself up initially is a bit cathartic as well. Like, how many times have you heard this, right? Somebody goes to the gym, they're like, oh man, last night ate too much food. I got to go sweat this out. I got to go beat myself up. And then they leave and they feel like they can barely move. And like, that was a great workout, right? It's like this cathartic self-flagellation from like punishment, right? Instead, try this. Go to the gym and think to yourself, how can I take care of myself? What's going to care for me like somebody I care about? Okay. That'll help you train yourself a little bit more appropriately. You should also feel more energy after your workout than you did before. You should leave the gym feeling better. This is when people figure this out, by the way, people like to work out in the morning. People who really figure this out like to work out before they go to work, because when they do it, they go to work and they feel sharp and energized. I could tackle my day. I feel great. That's how you should feel after your workouts. You should not feel like you survived. You should feel like you thrived. That will, now it's of course what makes up the workout and the exercises and all that we could talk about. But what I just said will direct more people in the right direction than almost anything else. You should leave the gym feeling good. Okay. Here's the other side of that. Here's another point. If you do that and you do it right and you're starting to see results, even if they're slow, but you feel good and you kind of enjoy going, what are we doing? We're developing a relationship with exercise that you're going to want to maintain. You're going to want to continue to go. We got to think of this in those terms. We can't think of workouts in the terms of, I can survive this for the next few months and then I'll figure it out afterwards. Like if you dread going, if you hate it, if you leave and you're sore and you can't move and that self-hate eventually goes away and you just feel like crap and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like you're done. You're not going to go anymore. And then you rebel, by the way. This is what happens is that people, you'll talk to people and they'll say things like, hey, how's your workout going? Oh, I stopped. I just want to enjoy my life. Like what? What do you mean you want to enjoy your life? The proper application of exercise and nutrition, there's almost nothing that will improve every facet of your life, literally, like simply becoming more fit and healthy in the real way, in the appropriate way. Nothing. Think of anything, right? Your ability to parent your kids or be a partner or work or sleep, connect with others. Like if you're more fit and healthy, everything gets better. And yet people say, I stopped because I want to enjoy my life. Well, you were doing it wrong. You were definitely doing it wrong.
Hey YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
That is a real issue for older individuals is if they fall, especially individuals over the age of 65. If they fall and they break a hip, the unintended consequences of not just the injury, but the immobility, it's devastating.